I actually thought of you. I'm like, oh, what are you writing?
Oh, yeah, I'm right around the corner.
Yeah, oh, seriously, nice. Don't mind us, we're just having technical difficulties.
That was Drew's fault.
True.
I take it
The
back.
18th.
John did tell me he was.
So, thank you for joining us for the Selectmen's meeting of June 18th. We'll call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Moved it. Over there now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have quite the full agenda tonight, so please humor me while I try to read through it all. We will go through the reading of the agenda. That'll be followed by community relations, announcements, and open forum. We then have 5 appointments and resignations tonight. They are in order: Cultural Council, reappointments for terms that expire June 30th, 2019, special officers, traffic controllers, and auxiliary officers. Scheduled appointments, 6:40 p.m., the Council on Aging, joint appointment, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., Fuss and O'Neill Public Outreach Meeting, Charlton Spencer Integrated Water Infrastructure Vulnerability Assessment and Climate Resiliency Plan, 8 p.m., Hazardous Mitigation Plan Update, 8:30 p.m., Public Safety Building Committee. Then, under new business, request for common victular coffee food license from Putters Miniature Golf LLC, town property naming policy, the naming of Potter Village Bridge. 3, public records request documents received on June 6, 2019. 4, Tough Mudder request for special alcohol permit and traffic and crowd management permit. And 5, Board of Selectmen summer schedule. There is nothing under old business nor any committee reports. Under policy review, one policy to be discussed is the policy and procedure for requests that are made inbound to the Selectmen's office. That will be followed by the town administrator's report and the other business unknown at the time of posting. Then we will announce our next meeting and adjourn for executive session. So the first item on the agenda, announcements, and then we'll do open forum. Road closings. Harrington Road will be closed daily for construction from July 8th to the 19th from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and will be open to local traffic only. Household hazardous waste and electronic collection will be Saturday, June 29th, 2019 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Casella Waste Services Facility, 165 Barefoot Road, Southbridge. Proof of residence will be required. Town Hall will be closed on Thursday, July 4th, 2019 in observance of Independence Day. And that is a very short list of announcements. Is there anyone here?
David?
I had one announcement.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Is anyone here for open forum? Another announcement. Ms. Noble.
Thank you very much. Just a very brief announcement. At the recent Marijuana Advisory Committee, which I was at just prior to this one, I learned of another job fair being held by Green Gold Group on June 26th at the Spencer Fish and Game Club, 155 Mechanic Street in Spencer, Massachusetts. Again, that's June 26th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Green Gold Group will be having another job fair. They're looking to hire approximately 40 more individuals. 7 of them would just be for security, and the rest would be for their, primarily for their grow facility up in Brookfield, and perhaps a few retail staff here in Charlton. So if you're not doing anything next week, head over to the job fair.
That's cool.
Thank you. Is there anyone here for open forum? Oh, yes, that's right. Ms. Grondalski. Right.
Who's refusing to sit with us?
Mrs. and Ms. Grondalski.
Good evening. Christine Grondalski, 15 Priscilla Lane in Charlton. I'm here representing two boards this evening. First and foremost, the Old Home Day Committee, and then following that, the Charlton Cultural Council. So thank you for your time this evening. The Old Home Day Committee just wanted to make the Board of Selectmen aware that we are currently accepting nominations for the range of community service awards. To date, we have received nominations for Citizen of the Year, as well as a few nominations for individual community service award. There are actually 5 categories, just as a reminder for the board. Citizen of the Year, it's the highest honor. That is awarded to a Charlton resident in good standing. Honorary Parade Marshal, this goes to a longtime resident who has consistently improved the quality of life in the community. Individual Community Service Awards, it's given to those who make a difference on a smaller scale, but that are very active within the Charlton community, that participate in various roles, from volunteering to scout leaders to raising funds for various causes, folks who set an example for the rest of the town. Business Award, that is to recognize a local business that regularly supports the community for various activities and fundraising. And the Youth Community Service Award, that is intended to recognize someone under the age of 18 who has altruistically pursued efforts to improve the town. Again, who sets an example for their peers. So the nomination form is currently available on the Town of Charlton website, and nominations can be submitted through to the Old Home Day website at oldhomeday@charter.net. It can also be mailed directly to the Old Home Day Committee through the Town of Charlton at 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass.
Anya Gondowski, 15 Priscilla Lane. Also part of the Old Home Day Committee, we are looking for someone to coordinate the all-famous frog jumping contest. The person who usually does it is not able to, and we obviously want to keep the tradition alive. So anyone who loves frogs, it would be like a 2-hour commitment. You just need to get someone to measure, make sure the frogs aren't jumping everywhere. It would be really cool if we had anybody who was willing to volunteer to do that. And if you were interested, also contact the Old Home Day Committee in the same ways mentioned previously.
And there will be support for anyone who cares to step up for that.
Or jump up.
That position, or jump up, that's correct.
Thank you, folks, I'll be here all night.
In terms of the Charlton Cultural Council, this year is our 40th anniversary of the art show. And we, as a council, are going through modifications to the form. The form will be updated within the next few weeks on the town website. We will still be offering awards for the same categories as last year. We have a youth category, a young adult category, which is up to ages 13 to 17, and an adult category, 18 and older. We have revised the types of art that can be submitted. Last year we had our first video submission, which was a new experience for us, and it was well received. The categories are film and digital photo, computer enhanced photo, drawing and pastels, oil and acrylics, sculpture, watercolor, mixed media, and video and animation. So we're very excited about it. We want to make this a pretty significant event, and we are fast in the throes of ramping up in terms of publicizing. So more to come, but just wanted to make the board aware.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And through the chair, first, thank you for all that you do, both you ladies. If you can convey our thanks to your committees, it would be appreciated. And can you just remind everyone when Old Home Day is?
Yes, thank you, Karen. Old Home Day, for those who are watching from home and who are in the room, it's a weekend of celebration that begins on the Saturday leading up to Labor Day. And both the frog jumping contest as well as the art show commence on September the 2nd. But since we are making a plug, there are fireworks that are held on the Saturday before. There is a band that will be performing that evening of the fireworks. It'll be held at Masonic Home, right on the road, and fireworks lit off at St. Joseph's Church. Tequila Sunrise will be performing, as they have in years past. And we really invite the community to come out, bring your picnic baskets, come support the local nonprofits that sell food at that event. And just, it's a great family activity. But the star of the show is on the Monday, on Labor Day, where we will have a number of events and a new announcer this year who happens to be sitting to my left.
Okay, that was embarrassing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anyone else here for open forum? If not, we'll move on to our first appointment, which is the Cultural Council. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a talent bank form from Angela Santamaria seeking to be appointed to the Cultural Council. We have forwarded this to the Cultural Council, who would recommend the board make the appointment. Her term of expiration would be June 30th, 2022. I would recommend the board make the appointment.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. The next appointments, number 2, is the reappointments for terms to expire June 30th, 2019. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. You were asked to make the appointments as requested with the new term expiration date. Those not seeking reappointment were Rachel Hartwig from the Personnel Board. Ms. Hartwig has been a member since May 13th, 2003. The EMS Coordinator, Terry Goff, has been the appointee for this position in the past, and it is in the town's bylaw for the board to make the appointment. Fire Chief Knopf has asked you to hold on making this appointment at this time. He's working with Human Resources to combine the position into the fire department. Letters have been prepared thanking them for their time and commitment to the town and are in your sign folder.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bueck?
I move that we make all the appointments as presented, except I do request that we hold off on the, I'm trying to read it, the Building Commissioner, Zoning Enforcement Officer, and I ask that we revisit that next month, or we extend that appointment to next month.
Through a chair,
Mr. Borowski?
Selectman Spivak, I'm just wondering if there's a way to time box it to extend the appointment until either 30 days or 60 days out, so that there is no,
Good point, yeah.
not delay, but that there's no
This is
gap in
somewhat
service
correct.
type of thing.
Thank you, I think that makes sense.
So,
We need 2 separate motions?
Yeah, I'm not sure how you want to do that, Mr. Chairman.
so
Yes, Mr.
there should be
Chairman.
hopefully one motion, and that would be then to approve all of the appointments, if I have this correct, with the sole exception being building commissioner, which you wanted to appoint for, what was it, 30, 60?
Oh,
What did you
we'll
say?
extend the appointment for 30 days? Till the end of, where are we, July?
Through the chair, who's the building commissioner?
Mr. Meskis.
Okay, we're not going to be reappointing him then, or we're going to holding it off?
No, not, right now, I'd like to request that we just hold it off on, we extend his appointment until our meeting in July, and we revisit that particular appointment separately.
So you
So
want to
let's make that into
extend-
a cohesive
So you
motion.
want to reappoint everyone on the list with that sole exception, reappoint that position for another 30 days, and then have to revisit that appointment again in 30 days.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any
For discussion.
Yes.
discussion?
Yes, why are we
Ms.
holding
Noble.
off that appointment for 30 days? Just curious.
Right, there's a number of reasons, but I'd really rather not get into it without Ms. Damascus here. So out of respect, I would just prefer we hold off.
Okay,
As
so
a-
you're,
We're not saying we're not going to, I'm just
Uh-huh.
respectfully requesting we hold off. We make the motion as stated. So he would be reappointed, but his extension, would it be extended to our July meeting, whenever that
so,
would
so
be?
then we would meet again in July to revisit it?
Yes, yeah. We're not saying he's not going to be reappointed, we're just asking.
No, I
So-
just wondered, I just wondered what the reasoning was that he wouldn't be included in this list, that's all.
Yeah, and just a comment,
Mhm.
I think that if we are going to take that course of action, that we should give a cause for the postponement or the
Mhm.
action.
Would you like me to comment then? Or do you want me to wait? I'm just trying to be, again. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
If it's performance-related, I think it's fine to say that. If it's related to a certain issue, I just think that, to Ms. Noble's point, if we're going to, and again, I'm trying to handle this to make everybody, respect everyone's positions and opinions. So if we're gonna do this and we are going to extend for only 30 days, I think we should at least just do it with the reason that we're doing it, so that
Mhm.
everyone knows why we're doing it.
Mhm. So there are several reasons. I will list a couple. Yeah, yep, sorry.
So, so
I'm just trying to, again,
I would, so then, you seem to be a little hesitant.
yes.
If I may, I don't want to lead someone, but if it's performance-related, I think it would be safe to say performance-related without specifics, because he's not here and
Mhm.
wasn't told we're going to have a discussion.
Correct.
And then he can be here when we have the next discussion. If it's not performance-related,
So
then it should be,
it's performance-related.
Okay.
May I leave it like at that?
That's,
That
if
works for
that's
me.
your reason, then
It
that's
is.
your reason, that's fine. I didn't feel
Mhm.
right excluding him from this list and only keeping it, that appointment for 30 more days without us being able to verbalize why we were behaving in such a manner.
Understood?
I think it's
And
fair.
I
No, I think
appreciate
it's
it.
very
yeah.
fair.
Okay, so we have a,
Was he, may I just ask, was he told about this ahead of time? Because I was unaware of this. I know that we've always tried to make sure that our employees are never surprised or find out that there's something
Trying-
wrong with their employment by the television.
Hence why I'm being, as I am acting right now.
So no, no one told him that this was under consideration.
think
I did not think it would be appropriate to have a conversation with someone until we discussed it at open meeting.
and she
and
actually
in-
just said she wants to have it with him present, so she doesn't want to discuss it when he's not.
Correct. But to be fair to everyone. And I feel that is the appropriate action to take. That is why I'm taking it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, in the future, when we bring forward appointments, I would ask that the board consider that if any selectman wants to make a motion as such that's kind of out of the order and that might surprise the employee, that you at least let me know so the person could just know. And that's not breaking any open meeting laws, but it certainly would be considerate to the employee.
Yes, so I think that is a perfectly reasonable request. We will follow that. We have a motion and a second, and reason was given without specifics because, to Ms. Spivak's credit as well, and also to protect the employee, she does not want to have a discussion without them being told. So,
And
to your point, yes, in the future, we should tell them in advance.
And through the chair, can we explain how the appointment process works? I know we'd had some feedback as to how, our questions, how it actually works. Do we have any kind of forms that the employees fill out to say how they think they've done over the course of their appointment? Also, it could help us insofar as to give them the proper tools that they need. If there was something lacking that we could help, be it training, any kind of professional development. And again, so the folks at home, the folks here, and honestly, the new select person, myself, could have a better understanding how this all unfolds, because we do it obviously every year. And perhaps it's not directed to you, but to our town administrator, just if you could go through the process.
Yeah, if you care to comment on the process, I would throw out, I have in the past brought up the topic of self-evaluations for department heads, which we do at work, and all of my team members have to do that every year. I have to do it every year. So that falls in line with some of the things you just said. I think it is a developmental aid to employees, including department heads, so I'm certainly in favor of pursuing that, but I still think that is something to be done with human resources and the personnel board.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yep.
So if you care to elaborate on the process, or we can get someone from the personnel board or human
No,
resources?
I can tell you the process for reappointments. Generally, our office reaches out to people who have appointments, and I'm thinking more of committees
Mhm.
than department heads, because most department heads don't have annual appointments. They have become, at-will employees. Our office reaches out to see if they want to continue in their position. If they say yes, then we put them forward, their names forward. If they say no, then we will advertise and we will let you know. If there's anything that's come out through the year, you know that appointments are coming, so any Board of Selectmen has an opportunity to let our office know if there's a concern. We usually don't get concerns at this point. It would be much better to bring up concerns ahead of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, okay, we have a motion and a second, and I believe that was to reappoint all the reappointments with the exception of building commissioner, which was a 30-day reappointment for however many days. I think it'd be safe between now and the next selectmen's meeting to revisit that appointment.
Correct.
Is there any further discussion?
Through a chair, I'm sorry, to Selectwoman Speedway, through you. Is it worth going out 60 days? Only because I don't know when we're meeting in July, because we haven't set the summer schedule yet.
That's a good idea,
But, I mean,
To cover it, yeah.
That is a good idea.
yeah.
just in case.
I'm
Or,
good.
or,
I'm willing to
or
move-
if somebody's not around in July or something, I
Are
don't
you
know.
going to
just-
amend your motion to 60 days?
I am willing to do that.
Yeah,
Are you willing to amend your second?
sure.
Okay. Sorry to run the amendment now.
Was it tell me?
Okay, so we have an amended motion to 60 days for the building commissioner, and that also has been, the second has been amended as well to 60 days. Is there any further discussion? So all those in favor of the motion as amended, reappointing all the reappointments that expired June 30th, with the exception being building commissioner, which will then be reappointed for a 60-day term to be revisited between now and the August selectmen's meeting.
Mhm.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
And for the chair, if I may, for the public's sake, they don't have a copy of this list, where can they find it?
Can we post it?
Our office.
Our office, can we post that online possibly? So they can find it in our office and we can get it posted online.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Could that list be read? Is it long?
It's
It's
pretty
pretty long
lengthy,
list.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a couple of pages long.
Okay.
So the next item, but we will get it online, and hopefully within a day, I hope. The next item under reappointments will be special officers. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from Police Chief Maxfield asking for the following to be reappointed as special officers for fiscal year 2020. Sean Baxter and Curtis Sampson. I would recommend the board make the reappointments as requested.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously. The next item under reappointments is auxiliary, traffic controllers. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from Chief Maxfield asking for the following to be reappointed to the traffic controllers for fiscal year 2020. Bob Giannotti, Diane Ledoux, and Michael Sullivan. I would recommend the board make the reappointments as requested.
So
Through
moved.
through the
I'm
chair,
sorry, forgive me.
no, I think it's Dwayne, or do we have?
Dwayne?
Dwayne.
Dwayne.
What did I say?
Diane.
Oh,
Just-
thank you.
Okay.
A spot on my glasses.
It's all right.
Oh, that's the one on YouTube. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second for a discussion. I just have a quick question, perhaps of the chief. What is a traffic controller?
Yes,
Just like
sir. Traffic controller is a retired police officer from another, right now, they're all from other communities. They come and work details for us. They're trained. You know, they've had a career in law enforcement. They're high-speed, low drag, no problem. So, you know, best
So
use.
detail work.
Detail work only.
Thank you, chief.
Sir.
Any other questions while he's sitting there? No, just
Yeah.
kidding.
I'm waiting till you get back to your seat.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously. The next item will be auxiliary officers. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir, attaches a list from Police Chief Maxfield asking for the following to be reappointed as auxiliary officers for the fiscal year of 2020. I would recommend the board make the reappointments as requested.
So moved. Unless you want to read all the names, but I'm good.
Second?
Second, yeah, can we, there's not that many names. Rodrigo Araujo, Frank Potosi, Daniel Brunel, John Freeman, Justina Lapierre, Paul Morelli, Jamie O'Neill, Bernie Ryan, Jordan Ryan, Thomas Wilk, Michael Novak, Anthony Bose, Cassandra Vasquez, Nicholas Tessier, and Jennifer Turgeon. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to scheduled appointments. We're a little behind. We'll start with our 6:40 Council on Aging Joint Appointment. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. That was Selectman McGrath. He is on his way. At the board's May 21st, 2019 meeting, you accepted the resignation of Gail Stokes from the Council on Aging. We advertised the opening on the town's website and cable access and received one letter of interest from Cynthia Cooper. This was sent to the Council on Aging, who was recommending the appointment. The vote for an appointment must be done jointly and by roll call vote by both boards, and the term of expiration would be June 30th, 2021. I would recommend the board make the joint appointment.
So moved?
Second.
And I believe Cindy's here too.
She's right
Yeah,
there.
see that?
Where's Ms. Cooper?
Speech.
Hi.
So they have to make a
Welcome.
motion and second as
So-
well, or no?
Make a motion, we accept, and
By roll
It's
call vote.
unanimous.
So if you could say your name and
James Howard, I'm the chairman of the board.
yes.
Barbara Larson, member.
James Russell, member. Paul Kolesnikovis, member.
You
Someone
need
has
to
to
say yes
Yes,
or
yeah.
no. Yes?
Yes,
Yes.
Ms.
Thank
Noble?
you.
That's great.
Ms. Noble?
What?
By roll call vote?
Oh, yes.
What's not an option?
What? Yes, so,
I didn't know if I had to make a motion.
Ms.
Yes.
Bewak?
Of course.
Yes.
Yes,
Mr. Borowski?
absolutely.
Chair votes yes, and I would like to, if anything, say, Ms. Cooper, not only welcome to the council, but what an asset you guys just got.
You know it.
She is eloquent, intelligent. You couldn't have asked for someone better. Professional.
Pretty nice, huh?
And thank you for stepping up.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys, seriously, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Craver, we'll move on to our 7 PM, Fuss and O'Neill.
Yes. Representatives from Fuss and O'Neill are here to present the public outreach meeting regarding the Charlton Spencer Integrated Water Infrastructure Vulnerability Assessment and Climate Resiliency Plan for the town. That's a mouthful. The public information session will include an overview of the town's climate resiliency planning project undertaken through an award funded by the inaugural round of the MVP Action Grants through the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. This project includes an assessment of flooding risks associated with road stream crossings, dams, and water infrastructure, as well as an assessment of green infrastructure opportunities to increase flooding resiliency. The presentation will provide a brief introduction to the overall project scope and methodology and will focus on the recommendations related to each of the assessments. Several employees have been shepherding this project, and I'd like to thank Peter Boyer, Rose Conway, Carl Ekman, Jerry Foskett, Todd Gerard, Kara Himalowski, Fire Chief Ed Knopf, interim town planner Bill Scanlon, and town planner Randy Benson. So, thank you.
Good evening. We have a handout of the slides from board members.
Thank you so much.
And we do have extra copies if anyone else is interested in a copy up here. My name is Eric Moss. I'm with the firm Fuss & O'Neill, and we brought the rest of our project team members here tonight. Kevin Flood is a water and wastewater engineer. Julie Busa is a water resources scientist and ecologist. And Rachel Whiter, a water resources engineer. I'm sorry. I'll send you copies. See if I can work this projector now.
I think so.
I was told to swipe. Is it not working for you?
That's all right, all right. Handy IT guys.
Ready, let's see. Here we go, see if the screen turned on. Now you can tell. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to be presenting, we have about a half an hour presentation, and we're going to go over a summary of the project to date, some of the findings and recommendations from our project. We're going to present a little bit of the project background, and also we're looking for feedback from the board members and from many members of the public tonight who are interested in this project. We'll get to work this eventually. So we're going to talk a little bit about climate change. The goal of the project is really to look at the vulnerability within the town of Charlton, and in terms of climate change impacts, and looking at things like increases in precipitation, extreme storm events, and related flooding. In Massachusetts and in central Mass in particular, we've already seen the impacts of climate change in terms of some of the more frequent and extreme rain events that we've had both during the summer and during the winter, which have caused increases in riverine flooding and drainage-related flooding. So climate change impacts that we're going to be talking about are already here. We're seeing those, and the projections into the future are for more intense and extreme rainfall event, both related to hurricanes in the summer and the fall, and also in the winter with nor'easters and some of these events that we're getting, heavy rainfall and with heavy snowpack resulting in flooding issues. We're also looking at increases in overall rainfall throughout the year. In particular, increases in the winter and spring. We've seen between a 10 and 20% increase in those rainfall amounts during the winter and spring months. So together, all of that really has led to increased flood risk. And looking at increases in flooding-related impacts throughout the community and other communities in the area. So we're going to be talking about water infrastructure. And by water infrastructure, we really mean water supply, wastewater facilities, stormwater drainage facilities, and dams. Those are the major types of infrastructure we're looking at with this study. In terms of the culverts and bridges, obviously increases in flooding and in peak flows are going to have implications for potential washouts of undersized stream crossings. Dams could potentially fail and cause downstream effects and damage to areas that are populated. The stormwater drainage system is another aspect of the flooding problem in many communities with undersized and older drainage systems. And also looking at wastewater and water facilities, so pump stations, conveyance systems, treatment facilities, all could be impacted with increases in extreme rainfall and flooding. So just some background, again, as Robin mentioned, the town was awarded a planning grant back in 2017 through the MVP program, so it's a statewide grant for conducting climate resiliency planning studies. That process was completed in 2018 through a lot of involvement by the town staff and other stakeholders through kind of a workshop process. And that process identified some key findings. And one of those was to look at the water infrastructure in the community and ways to enhance the resilience of that infrastructure. That was one of the high priority recommendations. So in 2018, the town submitted and was awarded another MVP action grant along with the town of Spencer. It was a joint application. And they were successful. And that action grant is what funded this study that we're presenting here tonight. Again, this involves a town-wide assessment of the different types of water infrastructure in the community to develop recommendations to increase or enhance flood resiliency.
And I'm assuming those are state grants versus federal?
Those are state grants, exactly. The state has a pretty aggressive ongoing grant program. This MVP program is funding a lot of these studies statewide, and many communities now have come on board and have been certified and are taking advantage of that kind of continuing grant stream. So our objectives of our study was, one, to assess the vulnerability of Charlton's infrastructure to this increases in flooding. Looking at identifying measures to increase that resiliency, so adaptation measures for climate change, both now and into the future. And then we're looking to develop design concepts and other recommendations that can be implemented going forward with other grant money, whether it's MVP or other grant funding sources, to actually implement and construct some of these projects. And then lastly, the project has involved some community outreach, both with the project steering committee, that the folks that Robin mentioned at the start, and also meetings like this one tonight. Tomorrow night we're presenting this project in Spencer to their community. So I'm going to hand it off to our team members to go over the different types of assessments that we've done for the project. Hopefully that works.
So the first of the assessments had to do with road stream crossings. So these are your culverts and bridges throughout town. That process began with a GIS analysis where we looked at mapped streams and where they intersect with roads. And we set out to assess all of the crossings that could safely be assessed. So we looked at 132 crossings in Charlton and an additional 109 in Spencer. And that is essentially all mapped stream crossings with the exception of the Mass Pike and Route 20, which could not be accessed. Alright, so these are just some images to give you a little bit of an idea. If you haven't had a chance to step off the roads and see where the water is passing under, you can get a sense of what kind of infrastructure is out there. We have a lot of these small, relatively small round pipes that might be anywhere from a foot in diameter to 6 or 7 feet in diameter. We have in both Charlton and Spencer, there are a number of older stone structures as well. So a lot of this infrastructure has been in place for quite a long time. There are also some larger structures such as bridges and open bottom arches, which allow more water to pass through. And for each of these, we went through having a little bit of technical difficulty here. But for each of these analyses, or for each of these structures, we went through and did a whole suite of analyses. And they're not showing up properly on the screen here. But we looked at the hydraulic capacity of each one, which is how much water can actually pass through it. And we looked at a number of different design storms. So the storm that you expect to return every 10 years versus the 100-year storm, and how much water can go through each of these structures during those events to understand how they were sized for intense precipitation. We looked at geomorphic risk, which essentially asks if there are, for instance, if there's a sharp bend going into a culvert structure, that may allow for material debris to pile up and block the structure and cause potential flooding impacts. You could also have a situation where there's a drop-off after the culvert, where it comes out 4 feet or so above the stream bed, and that would allow it to scour out and transport material. We see that in a number of places in town. We looked at aquatic organism passage. So streams are vital habitat for fish and other aquatic organisms, and these culverts can be a barrier to their movements, which can affect the quality and health of streams as well as fisheries. And it tends to be that structures that are sized well and accommodate aquatic organisms are also sized well to accommodate large storms. So there's kind of those two tend to go hand in hand. We also looked at the structural condition. So as I mentioned, many of these are older infrastructure. So we were looking at what kind of shape they're in. Some of the metal pipes have rotted away. Most of the old stone structures are actually in relatively good shape, but they may have crumbled somewhere deep inside the pipe that you don't see from the outside, or they may just have been built for smaller storms and aren't sized to meet the needs that we have with today's weather. And we also looked at not only current hydraulic capacity, but we also forecasted what we would expect of future climate conditions. And so we added 20% to current precipitation to look at how each of these structures would be sized for those conditions. I'm not actually supposed to be seeing these slides. So I'm going to pass by some of these graphs.
Should I worry about all that red on the screen right now?
You should worry about the fact that I can't work it more than anything.
Is it stuck?
It is stuck, and now we're out. Okay.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's,
It's great, unfortunately.
it's at least polite, yeah, I was gonna say, that's nice.
It's very polite, it's a very polite machine.
Yeah, all right.
Let's see if we can jump back. My apologies.
No, no worries.
I'm gonna blame it on climate change.
All right, so what I really want to show you, if we can get there,
Seems to keep,
Doesn't like that slide.
it doesn't like this slide. I'd like to show you the concepts that we developed for several structures in town. Can we get some technical assistance? I'm not sure what's going on. We can plug in a laptop if we need to.
We can, and just try putting it off the stick onto,
Okay.
onto here. So this way you don't have to read off the stick. It might be an error on
Yeah,
the
it
stick.
could be.
Please.
Fiat looks, it looks good.
So, it is 472 or 2000, which one?
It's the Charlton.
June 18th, okay.
Karen, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
Just making sure this is not quiet.
So, this is where we are.
As you're going through that, how many culverts versus dams were actually looked at, or?
Sure. So culverts, we looked at a lot. I think I told you 132 in Charlton and an additional 107 or so in Spencer. Dams, we looked at, I believe, 20 in the larger screening. So we actually developed recommendations for all 20. There were approximately half here in Charlton and half in Spencer.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the meantime?
That's where it fails.
Yeah, we're getting a laptop turned on so we can hopefully circumvent this problem. Do you need HDMI?
Just what I'm singing.
I have one.
Always happens.
I don't think it was the projector, I think it was, the flash drive, the stick that they were using.
Sounds like it's a.
May I have the flash drive?
Back in the 1950s, after Hurricane Diane, there was an extensive number of dams built to control the water. Westfield Dam, Hopkinsville Dam, there's a whole bunch, there's a whole series of them. I'm sure that played into what you're looking at now. 'Cause back then they recognized flooding issues, because they had.
Right.
So, I mean, some of those dams, I don't think those dams are under too much pressure on them.
Rachel's gonna talk more specifically about the dams. There are a number of dams that are specifically oriented towards flood in other words,
Flood control.
flood control.
Yeah, I think they pretty much all work.
Yeah. Right.
There are also a number of small dams that were built for other reasons.
Yeah.
And so we were
Mill
looking at a
ponds.
variety of different kinds of
Things like
structures, yes. And obviously, there's gonna be different recommendations going forwards based on those different uses.
But the Army Corps of Engineering, they did the big dams.
Right.
In fact, Bufham's, they just pulled the cover off one of them and broke the factory seals because it had been there forever. And the ranger was telling us that everything in there was like, it was the day they sealed it up. They just took it apart and looked at it and nothing had worn in all these years, and they put it all back together again and resealed it. Shows you how good they built it back.
And unfortunately, now that they opened it, we'll have a problem in a year.
Now,
Yeah.
you're right, yeah, you're right.
Which is
So
why.
they just said how well they were built back at that time.
We do have the handout if you need us just to go to the handout.
So we really need our cue cards.
It's just, it won't be as good without the pictures.
Look, this big card picture.
So while they're finishing up, if I may, Mr. Chair, there is a large push across the state for cities and towns to do this work, to identify what their vulnerabilities are regarding infrastructure. We're seeing more and more floods. We're seeing more and more rain events that we haven't seen before. We're seeing 100-year floods, 2 in 1 year. So we're trying to do this planning to upgrade. There's also at the state level, they are working at trying to put a dollar amount to what this is, and what this will cost, and it is astronomical.
Sure.
So the state has started to put money towards some funding, but right now, a lot of the funding is going into the planning phases because that's where we are with it. And then part of, for Charlton, as we complete our studies and then look at some designs, we'll be able to do some of the planning, Bill, that you've talked about, is trying to plan out 5, 10, 20 years, and then also start those capital plans and figuring out exactly how much money we need and how can we best fund these things.
Music to my ears, except the spending money part, but I guess.
I do recall last year,
Yes.
we had an issue with flooding last year. We
We
had
did.
big issues with flooding last year, where roads were closed, we had to pump roads out, Todd Gerard was extraordinarily busy taking care of that.
Through the chair, just a cautionary statement. Even though the state and the federal government are looking at funding a lot of this stuff, or providing a lot of funding, a lot of it is going to be sucked up by the coastline. There are towns there, most of the towns along the coastline have to supply their own money for seawall and seawall repairs.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, and, you know, they do get grants, they do, you know, low percentage, you know, grants and stuff, but they are looking at billions upon billions of dollars for the coastline. So I think that, you know, just as a cautionary statement, after we identify a lot of this stuff, the town is going to have to look at it financially as to how we're gonna approach this, because I honestly don't think there's gonna be a lot of federal or state money available for inland towns. I think a lot of it is gonna be sucked up by the coastline.
No, I think you're right on.
So,
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. I think we're gonna proceed with the paper copies.
okay.
Which there are more up here in case somebody wants them.
She just handed out to
Oh,
everyone in
sorry.
the audience. And I would ask, because we can't broadcast this when this is over, if you could share the electronic file so we can get it online, that would be great.
So we're on the bottom of page 6, and I'm gonna start telling you about 4 structures in particular that rose to the top after doing all of our assessments, and running each of those different tests that I described to you and different things that we were looking at. There were several structures that stood out as having higher scores than others, and one of those is on East Bailey's Road, and at this structure, this is one of these ones where I was telling you there are some very old stone structures in town. So this is one where it's stone on one side and a pipe on the other. So most likely the road was widened at some point and another piece was added on. The metal pipe that's there has rotted away and the structure is undersized to accommodate most storms. So on the next page, you can see a bit of a map of sort of where the structure is, some of the issues that were highlighted during our field findings. It's much narrower currently than the bank full widths, which means that the stream is constricted going into it. And so what we're proposing there is to replace that existing 3-foot pipe and 3-foot stone box culvert with a 14-foot wide embedded box culvert that would allow water and aquatic organisms to pass through much more freely. The second structure is at Blood Road, and this one again was undersized for all of the storm intervals that we looked at. There's also a 2-foot high dam, probably one of these mill pond dams, just upstream of the crossing, and so there's an impoundment just behind where the structure goes under the road, and there's a free fall coming out of the culvert. So this is one of the structures that I was describing that has geomorphic risk because water is actually dropping out with some force and scouring away a pool at the outlet.
I'm sorry to interrupt, and I hate to be that guy, but just for the people watching at home for now, estimated cost on the first one is $300,000 to $400,000. Second one is $100,000 to $200,000. So when we start thinking about capital planning and what this is going to cost, this is not, hey, maybe we can use free cash for a year and get this all taken care of. To the town administrator's point, this is going to take long-term planning and really tightening our belts to say, how are we going to handle this? Because as far as I can tell, this is not a question of if these fail or if they're going to cause a problem. It's when they're going to cause a significant problem for us. So again, I just wanted to point out, at least for the first two, we're talking, we're at 2 now and we're already up to $500,000-$600,000. So anyway, forgive my interruption.
And you're noticing a trend that does not go away, I'm sorry to inform you. A lot of this infrastructure will be expensive to replace. So at this site, we're proposing that the existing structure, which is 1.5 feet wide, be widened to a 4-foot wide embedded box culvert. And as the selectman noted, the cost for that process would be somewhere in the range of $100,000 to $200,000. The third structure I want to highlight is on Freeman Road. Again, this structure is undersized given the sizes of storms that we are expecting, both now in longer return intervals, but also with increases expected from climate change. This structure was in adequate structural condition, but again, because of that constriction, because it's much narrower than the stream itself, there was a large downstream scour pool and sediment deposition. So sediments being removed directly below the stream and directly below the structure and pushed downstream. For this one, the replacement suggestion is to turn that 2.5-foot wide pipe into a 10-foot wide box culvert. And the cost associated with that would be between $200,000 and $300,000. The next structures are a pair at Stafford Street and Center Depot. So where those 2 roads cross, the stream goes under both of them in succession. Again, those structures are undersized for all of the storm intervals that we looked at. The inlet to the Center Depot structure is submerged partially and or fully submerged, and the outlet is partially submerged. And if you look at the map on the next page, you can see how close those 2 structures are together. And that is contributing to that backwatering effect. So the water that is trying to come through one structure, the water that's trying to come through the downstream structure is actually further constrained by the fact that there is another structure right above it. And so these 2 are compounding the problems hydraulically with letting water through there. So here we're proposing to take what is currently a 2.5-foot pipe and a 2-foot pipe respectively, and to enlarge them to open bottom arches of about 7.5 feet wide. And the cost associated with that project, because there are 2 structures, are between $400,000 and $500,000.
Amongst this immediate list, are these in priority order, or is it just one of the, like, they're all bad, so we have to fix them all immediately, or sooner than later?
These 4, I would have to check. I don't believe that they're necessarily in highest priority order, but they all fell out at the highest priority
Gotcha.
of the 132 structures that we assessed. So they're all in a similar position in terms of their priority.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to speak to the dams.
Thanks, Julie. So, as we were talking about, we did do a dam assessment as well, and there's quite a variety of different types of dams in both Charlton and Spencer. As one citizen was speaking about, there are several that have been built by the Army Corps for flood control. There are a number of other dams that currently impound recreational ponds impoundments, and then there are a lot of other dams that are left over from the era when our streams and rivers powered the mills that ran industry in New England. And there's actually quite a number of that last category in Charlton, which are kind of tucked away and hidden in the woods and don't really have a purpose anymore. So you can see an example of a couple of those on the top, and then a few recreational dams at the bottom just of this slide, just to give you a sense of what some of the dams in the community look like. And we did focus on these smaller dams not owned by Army Corps because we wanted to look at dams where there was a large potential for action to either improve flood storage or take other actions to improve ecological connectivity and flood resiliency. And since the Army Corps is already managing the dams they built, to some degree there's a limited ability to change what's going on there in a shorter time scale. And these are dams that the town may have more input in what happens. So our objective was to determine the condition and the ownership, where possible, of 20 dams in Charlton and Spencer. And I say where possible because some of these dams are likely hundreds of years old. There are dams in New England that are 200 to 300 years old. And so we do our best with the data we have to make these determinations. And then using this information, we've recommended actions that will improve flood resiliency and safety within the community, as well as ecological health. And again, a lot of times these actions can go hand in hand, just like with culverts. So our methods were to start with an initial screening of dams in the community and getting input from members of the town staff about dams that they manage or dams that have been issues in the past. As well as looking at the state's dam safety file database and reviewing their files for any information they may have. Then we conducted field assessments of all of the dams where we were able to get access, and the town was really instrumental in helping us get access to many of those dams. There were also a number of dams where that were privately owned that the owners were not willing to grant access, and so for those dams we used information purely from the files that we could get and any other local information that we could find. And so we took this information and we used it to evaluate our alternatives. And these alternatives include, like I said, changing the dam to allow it to provide more flood storage, more like an Army Corps dam. Another option is to remove the dam, to reduce the burden of management of the dam, to remove the barrier to passage within the stream ecosystem, and to remove a great flood risk, because when dams fail during floods, they tend to fail catastrophically, and the damage can be really severe and costly both in terms of dollars and in human lives. And then sometimes the action we recommend is to maintain the dams as they are. And the criteria that we look at to make these determinations, the first one we look at is the current use of the impoundment, whether it's already used for flood control, whether it's used as a public or private water supply, if it's used for recreation, such as boating and lakeshore properties, fishing, and if it's used for conservation of certain species. Next, we look at the owner's ability to maintain the dam, which is usually evidenced somewhat by the condition of the dam, but also if we can contact the owner, their information on their procedures for maintaining the dam. And then we look at failure risk. And the risk of failure is defined by two factors, which are typically assessed for most dams. The first is the condition of the dam. So is it in good condition? Is it really well maintained? Or is it falling down? Does it have areas where it's leaking? And is therefore in poor condition? And then we also look at hazard classification. And hazard classification is based on what the impact of the dam would be if it were to fail. So are there a lot of homes and businesses right downstream where people could be severely injured or killed if the dam failed? Or is it a long stretch of undeveloped area where the fallout wouldn't be as great? We did look at the potential for repurposing for flood mitigation using some information about the watershed. And we looked at the stream continuity potential. So in terms of allowing aquatic organisms such as fish to move stream corridor. The dam, like culverts, presents a barrier to that movement, and so we looked at what the benefit would be if that dam were taken out, because not all stream corridors have the same habitat quality. And as I said, where field data was then available, we did use file data, and that usually comes in the form of inspection reports that have been filed to the state, which catalogs a lot of this information. So we did make recommendations for all of the dams in the town, which was approximately 10. But I'm going to talk to you about a few dams where we decided that these were the highest priority. And we prioritized the dams based on their failure risk, because safety is the first concern for dams, and failure risk is the major safety risk. So, as I said, failure risk is based on both condition and hazard class. So dams that were in worse condition and had a much larger hazard class, so they're much taller, have much more development downstream, tended to be the highest priority. And so, the names of the dams might mean a little bit more to you in the maps, when I show the pictures of the dams and the maps following, but we made recommendations regarding 6 dams, and for all of these dams, based on their current uses and the other factors I spoke about, as well as some feedback from the town, our recommendation was to remove these dams. And we didn't go into the removal costs for each and every dam, but dam removal costs can vary significantly. They can be as low as $100,000, or for some very, very, very large dams, it can be well over $1 million. These would probably tend to fall in the lower half of that range, but it's site specific for every project. So the first dam is Lower Sibley Pond Dam. It's located just south of, it's been located actually directly between I-90 and Route 20. It currently has no known uses, and it's privately owned, but we were unable to contact the owner. So has the state. They also haven't been able to contact the owner, and they conducted the last inspection report on their own. The dam is a significant hazard class, meaning there's some significant development, including major roads downstream, and it's in poor condition. So you'll see a pattern in the following slides for the dams that we're making this recommendation. Since there's no use, since the dam isn't being maintained, and because it poses a flood risk, we recommend removing the dam. Similar situation at Wee Laddie Pond Dam. It may have been a conservation or recreation impoundment in the past, but again, there was no current use. It's privately owned, and it's a severe failure risk. So we recommend pursuing removal.
How is that done in other towns, eminent domain?
Not necessarily. Sometimes when the owner doesn't know that they have responsibility for the dam, they may not even know they own the dam. That's often the case with very old dams. And if they're agreeable, it's up to them in the end generally whether or not to try and maintain the dam, which does incur a significant cost and a responsibility going forward, or whether to take the one-time option of removing the dam if they don't see any value in keeping it. And often, when that happens, and we've been involved in some of these projects, partnerships are usually built between the town, the dam owner, and other partners who are willing to help fund the dam to help spread the burden of both the labor and the cost. And often the federal government and the state will provide some aid. But typically the conversation starts with the dam owner to determine, what their goal is for that dam, and, what information do they even have about it.
Thank you.
And this is going to sound a little repetitive, but Railroad Pond Dam, which is actually directly under Old Spencer Road. If this picture looks like a road embankment and nothing else, it's because it is. It just happens to be a dam as well. It's half privately owned and half owned by the town of Charlton. And again, it's a significant hazard class. It's in poor condition, which means this is one of our higher risk dams here in the town. So our recommendation here is to consider pursuing removal, but in a way that maintains the alignment and the position of Old Spencer Road to keep it open for public access. Now, the last 3 dams were not ones that we originally intended to assess, but in driving through your town doing these assessments, we actually happened to come across them just on the side of the road. And this is something that's a little bit common here in the Northeast. But there are 3 dams right in Charlton Center that all are up there consecutively, one after another, right up the river, Katy Brook actually, and all 3 of them are directly upstream of private properties, including private homes and major thoroughfares, including Route 20 and Route 31. And the first one is located behind the post office on Power Station Road. The second one is located a little bit farther north, just upstream of a major intersection, upstream of Route 31, and the third one is also located upstream of Route 31, where Route 31 curves to the east, and the Katy Brook takes a bend, comes back around underneath it again. And these dams we consider to be especially hazardous because, based on their size, we typically think they would be considered a significant hazard given the development that's immediately downstream, and they're all in extremely poor condition. And what can happen when large structures fail on a river is they can fail in a cascading manner, where if one fails upstream of another, the wave of sediment and stone and water that's released can crash into the next one downstream and take out that one, which can take out the road downstream, which can take out the next one. So there is a little bit of a potential for a chain reaction here. And in addition, when we assessed the crossings under Route 31 here, we found that at least one of them was also a relatively high priority crossing, and that it would fail pretty quickly if clogged with this debris. So again, we recommend determining the ownership of these dams and pursuing removal potentially as one larger project, or in phases. So that's my last slide on the dams. Are there any questions before I move on to the green infrastructure? So another aspect of the project was to take a look at sites around the towns that might provide good opportunities for installation of green infrastructure or low impact practices. So these are practices that help us slow down runoff and soak up some of it or allow it to infiltrate into the ground, to reduce the burden on your storm sewers, and to reduce the amount of pollutants that are going into your natural water bodies, whether those are the ponds or the creeks in your backyard or the wetlands within the town. And our goal here was to identify at least 10 sites where we could recommend practices to improve water quality and reduce flood risk by slowing down those peak flows. And so our method started with an initial site screening using mapping and a geographic information system. So we took data available from the state and overlaid it using soils data and publicly owned sites to determine sites that were municipally owned or state owned that would be well sited for these types of practices. And then we performed a field inventory, so we actually went out to all of these sites over the course of 4 days to get a sense of what was actually on the ground and what specific needs there were, as well as what practices might be suitable for the site. And we did field inventories for 33 sites and developed concept designs for 10 of them. So the first site in Charlton that we developed a concept for is the Heritage School. And at the schools, the head custodians were kind enough to accompany us on a tour of the site to let us know what their problems really were, because schools tend to be large, complex sites. So one problem they identified was flooding on the access road, Heritage Drive, due to the way the road is graded. And so our recommendation is to regrade and potentially elevate that road. And we became aware, thanks to the custodian, that a water main is going to be installed down Heritage Drive in the near future. And so our recommendation for cost savings would be to try to arrange to regrade the road and elevate it if necessary at the same time to avoid that cost of having to pave the road twice. We also noted that, like many of the other schools, there are community gardens and a greenhouse at the school. And the school has quite a large roof area, so we recommend some sort of project to capture some of the roof runoff and use it in student projects for in the greenhouse or in the community garden beds, so that they can get some hands-on experience with green infrastructure and with these concepts, and also be able to grow their own plants. So this is an opportunity that might be good for kids of many different ages. And then in addition, we recommended some bioretention basins for the islands within the parking lot. And what bioretention basins do is they're a basin made of layered media that are planted with plants, and what happens is the water goes down through that media and it's filtered by the soil, so it takes some of the pollutants out. It slows the water down, and in places where soil is allowed, allows some of that water to infiltrate into the soil instead of running off over the surface. And then plants also help take up some of that water and evaporate it. So what it allows some of these pollutants to be taken out before they reach the wetlands that are off-site, particularly in these areas where the storm sewers currently drain. So the next site was the Charlton Middle School, and you'll notice some similar recommendations. So they also have a greenhouse and some garden beds, so we recommended a similar rainwater capture system with an educational component, and some bioretention basins to capture and filter water from this parking lot south of the school near the athletic fields before that water enters the wetland to the west. But one thing that the middle school is also really interested in, and the school district was interested in when I spoke to them, is the roof on this building is 90,000 square feet and in some really bad shape, at least constantly, and they're constantly having to patch it. And so they're looking at having to replace it in a few years. And one concept that they were potentially interested in was the installation of a green roof on a portion of the roof at the front of the school that would help capture some of that water. It would help insulate part of the school, which green roofs can help mitigate heating and cooling costs by providing some insulation, and would also provide another educational component for the students. And I didn't mention on the last one, but the estimated cost for all of these put together is $426,000. You'll notice that we recommended some practices that are more ambitious and more expensive, and some that are less so, and that these all can also be broken out in phases or be timed to take advantage of grants or other work that's being done. And the previous project was, again, came into a similar amount, $513,000. At Charlton Elementary School, again, we recommended some similar practices. There's a bioretention basin recommended for the front parking lot that would be very visible, being out in the front of the school, and would also help provide some treatment. But the custodian had some very different problems that he needed to fix at this site. And that's that the runoff from the school roof and the parking lot and play area at the back of the school drains into the playground, and it's very soggy for much of the year. So what we're recommending for that area is to construct a trench upstream of the playground, or uphill of the playground, to collect that water and to divert it into an infiltration well under this field, which we believe will have the ability to infiltrate that water back into the ground. In addition, in some areas where there's been some erosion, we recommended some native plantings to help hold the soil and improve the aesthetics. And this project would, these projects together we estimate would cost $49,000. So that's a much different scale. Our fourth site was Prindle Lake Park, which is located on the shore of Prindle Pond. And here we noticed that a lot of runoff is coming down Prindle Hill Road and entering the parking lot. And there's a lot of sand and other pollutants that are washing through this parking lot and heading towards the lake. So what we recommended here was a bioretention basin just along the southwestern edge of the parking lot, so the water running off of the parking lot can enter the bioretention basin and be filtered and infiltrated into the ground before it enters the lake. And this could be accompanied by educational signage or other practices to let people know what the practice is for. And this project was in the realm of $28,000. And our last site is located right down the street, actually, at the Maynard Farm Recreation Area. And this is another bioretention practice to treat runoff from a parking lot. There's an existing swale here, but it's collected a lot of sediment, and in one place, at the outlet, it's actually severely eroded, and the outflow from the basin or the swale is uncontrolled. So we're just recommending upgrading an existing practice here to help maintain it and to help treat runoff from the parking lot. And this project would cost $44,000. And with that, I will hand it off to Kevin to speak about water and wastewater.
Okay, thank you, folks. Good evening, my name is Kevin Flood, I'm an associate with Fuss & O'Neill. I did the water and wastewater evaluation for this study, and I want to go through some of the things that we developed and some of the things that we found as we did the evaluations, working with Peter Boria from the Water and Sewer Department. First thing we did was we started to pull together GIS maps, which were really important to us so we can get a lay of the land for the town of Charlton and understand where equipment was and where it was in relation to FEMA floodplain locations, both the 100-year and the 500-year storm. So here for the sewer system, we show the entire collection system and the wastewater treatment plant for Charlton. We show 11 pump stations that we visited in the treatment plant, which is down in the southern part of town, right over here. All right, that was our first thing. And then we began to review it. So there is a significant amount of the collection system right around Glen Echo Lake. There's a major spine that runs through Route 20. And then there's some feeders off of Route 20 that head to the north and east, and the south and east, and then there's a little bit over towards the south and west along Route 20. We also developed one for the water system. So Charlton gets most of the water from the west in the town of Sturbridge, and water kind of comes up through the center of town there. And there is, again, a spine and some push-offs from the Route 20 water main that's there. There's also an area along Route 20, along the eastern edge here, that was installed a little time ago in order to get potentially water from the town to the east, but the permit was never approved, so they never could able to use the infrastructure that was installed. So the water system has 2 large storage tanks in town. It's almost 1 million gallons. That really helps with demands in the system throughout the year, as well as fire protection. So we developed these 2 maps, and then the next thing we did was begin the evaluations. So we visited a bunch of sites around the towns, including the 11 pump stations and the wastewater treatment plant, and we also looked at one water facility, which was a pressure regulating vault along Route 20. We documented the ground elevation using mass LiDAR information that gives us contours in and around town. And then we compared to FEMA flood mapping and elevations that were available. And then for those that were not, we had to estimate it based on the contours we did have available. And I'll show you the summary of the table that we did. Once we got to each site and we knew the elevations and understood what potential components could be affected by a flooding event or a severe storm event, we then documented that by using photos and kind of describing the vulnerabilities that each of these facilities had. So here's something that we included in the final report. We listed 8 facilities that we thought were potentially affected, and we came up with the ground elevation, the 1% or the 100-year flood elevation. In some cases, that was available from the FEMA firm maps. In other instances, those starred here on the table. We estimated it based on the outline for the 100-year or the 500-year storm. And then the last column is something that we as engineers typically use. For New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission, there is a guidance document that we as water and wastewater engineers use. It states that if you have a flood elevation, you're adding 3 feet to that in order to protect and elongate or provide longevity to the equipment that you install at these critical facilities. So the column at the right is 3 feet basically above the 100-year flood elevation, which is the middle column there.
So pretending I'm not an engineer, which I'm not.
Okay.
What's the 15-second elevator summary on this slide again? Like what, like, I'm trying to understand what it really means, and I'm just not.
We provided the ground elevation,
Yep.
and then I provided a 100-year flood elevation so that we understood what the flood elevation could be, and then when we got to each of the facilities to do the more detailed evaluations, we wanted to know whether or not there was critical components at the facility that could be affected.
What do you mean by flood elevation? Because I see that the ground elevation is 786, but then I see the 1% chance of
Right.
flood at 780.
So, let's go over here. So,
Okay.
the ground elevation of the old Worcester Road wastewater pump station is 786.6. The 1% chance elevation is 780 right here, so it's about 6 feet below the ground elevation, which means this site potentially could fail, and some of the equipment at the facility could fail if there's a severe weather event or a flooding event.
If it hits 780 or 783 respectively.
That's correct.
Perfect, I got you. Thank you, that was actually incredibly helpful.
Okay, just for a point of order, we have our next one at 8 o'clock, our
Okay.
appointment, so.
I got 8 more slides, and then I think Eric has.
We'll wrap it up, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll
All
stop
right.
asking questions.
All right, so we
Have about
identified, as
5
I said,
minutes.
8 facilities, 7 of them pump stations on the wastewater side and 1 water facility, which was a pressure regulating boil. The old Worcester and North Main Street pump stations are somewhat submerged pump stations. They're about 4.5 feet in the ground, if you will. And then a lot of the critical components of that facilities, such as the gen sets, the backup power, the main transformers, the control panels, and even the pumps are at the bottom of those facilities. So if they ever got flooded, all of the equipment would be damaged, and then it would take a while for you to get it back up and running. The Mugget Hill pump station used to be a Smith & Lovelace, one of these package stations, but it was flooded. So they converted that to a wet well pump station, which is basically just a big hole in the concrete hole in the ground with submersible pumps now, and it pumps out to the treatment plant. The last one is the South Sturbridge Station, which is right adjacent to Katy Brook, right near a trucking facility that kind of stores trucks, and those are the trucks that use a lot of the snow plows in the winter. Again, these are our ground level wet well facilities that have electrical equipment on the ground above the facility, and those are the critical components that we're worried about if there's ever flooding on those sites. 4 other sites that I wanted to point out: the Stevens Park Road Pump Station, which is on the south side of Glen Echo Lake. That has an issue in that it's not really flooding, but it's basically at a low point of a lot of surface runoff from the solar facility right above it, as well as the road that comes down to that part of the lake in that area. And the equipment, including the main electrical cabinet, the green box that you see there, as well as the white piece of equipment, which is the ventilation and the odor control for the pump stations, those have been compromised already by significant runoff events in the past, as well as the fencing, the security fencing around it. And we put in a grant to try to get this, but we haven't heard yet from it. So the next 2 are MTA pump stations that the town got based on groundwater contamination from the Massachusetts Transportation Authority in and around Route 90, the Mass Pike. So those stations were put in, and those are, again, right around the 100-year floodplain elevations. And they're buildings that have a top floor, and then they go down in the ground, anywhere from 10 feet for the MTA 5E pump station on Route 20 to the J. Hammond one, which goes 30 feet down into the ground. And they have some critical equipment 30 feet below the ground that if it gets flooded on top, obviously the stuff down below is getting flooded. The final facility is the pressure regulating vault on Route 20. I think it's just west of Stafford Lane. This is right near a grass level swale that gets a lot of runoff during heavy rainfall events. And they've had issues in the past where that regulating vault has flooded and the pressure regulating valve that's in there to kind of regulate pressures in the water system has failed, so. All right, so here are the resiliency recommendations that I came up with. I'll try to go through these as quick as I can. The first two, Old Worcester and North Main Street, again, are these submerged stations. We're looking to put a barrier around the entire pump station with an entrance area that would be equipped with weir boards so that you can get in there under normal operations, but if you're expecting a heavy rain event or a flooding event, you put that in there to protect the critical equipment. Cost for each one of these is around $34,000 for these barriers, but the interesting thing here is it does include some of the contractor general requirements and a contingency, because we're really in the conceptual stage at this point. Mugget Hill is a pump station, I said, that was converted to a wet well pump station. And right now, there's still some electrical equipment that's only 3 feet above the station. We think you need to provide some drainage swales to kind of redirect the runoff away from the station and then raise some of the electrical components a little higher so that we're comfortable that we wouldn't lose the electrical equipment during a heavy event. The South Sturbridge pump station, again, very similar to the Mugget Hill one. We provide drainage swales and redirect it and lift some of the critical electrical components. Cost for that were $25,000, and the cost for the Mugget Hill one was $31,750. Okay. The Stevens Park Road pump station, this had a significant amount of effort because there's so much runoff coming in from all sides of the pump station. There'd be a significant amount of kind of redirecting the runoff. We'd have to construct some new concrete pads for the equipment, specifically the electrical cabinet and the ventilation equipment, and then we'd have to reset the fencing around that. So that came up to around $61,000. And then the last one's here, Route 20, the Route 20 MTA 5E pump station. What we try to do for these stations is, because there's an entrance right at the lowest point of the site, we'd probably put a barrier around the front door of the facility so that water couldn't run in, and then we'd seal the penetrations to the lower level. Specifically, they have some hatches that I outlined here, and then some penetrations through the floor for the ventilation and the piping. J. Hammond, very similar. Again, we show the watertight barrier at the front door, and then sealing the penetrations through the floor to the lower levels. As I said, this one's a fairly deep one, around 30 feet deep, so there's 2 hatches going down to the lower levels, and then there's a lot of conduit for power and then ventilation to get to the lower levels. And then, of course, the pumps themselves are at the lowest level. The last one was the regulating vault, and what we're looking to do there is, again, redirect the runoff away from that vault, and then we have to probably do some structural improvements to the vault structure itself, just to minimize the amount of water getting in, because right now there's some damage and some work that needs to be done for the structure itself. All right, I'll turn it
All right,
over.
we're gonna wrap it up.
Thank
you. The grant end date is June 30th, so we're essentially trying to wrap up our report with final recommendations in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. There is some grant closeout documentation that needs to get submitted by July 31st. So we'll kind of finish out the project over the next month or so. And I guess the last thing we'll leave you with is really, the idea behind this project is that it presents kind of a long-term plan. And as funding is available, as grant money is available, it's really looking kind of forward-looking. And obviously, there's a lot of expensive recommendations in here. Some are less so than others, but it does give the town sort of a blueprint for the next 30-plus years and kind of a proactive approach to climate change. So with that, we'll take any final questions.
No, that was excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
I just saw you nodding your head because I'm like, all right, John knows what.
Mr. Craver, can we get the electronic version of this on the website?
Extras.
who may not have seen all of it when we lost the screen, this will be posted online electronically. It is 8:05. We'll move on to our next appointment, which was 8 o'clock, hazardous mitigation plan update. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. The town's of Charlton's draft hazard mitigation plan is nearly complete. One of the FEMA requirements is to present an update on the plan and the planning process to the Board of Selectmen. This presentation will take about 20 minutes, allowing for time for questions for the board and the public in attendance. Several employees have been shepherding this project, and I'd like to thank Todd Gerard, our conservation agent, Carl Ekman, our emergency management director, Jerry Foskett, highway superintendent, and Kara Hemilowski in our office for their leadership and working with CMRPC on this plan. Peter?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Peter Peliquin. I'm Associate Planner for Central Mass Region Planning Commission. I'm here to give kind of an overview of the drafting of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. A lot of the things I will talk about tonight is much broader of a scope than what Fuss and O'Neill just presented. They presented sort of a very detailed and well thought out, I might add, scope of work for water, and this is more all encompassing all natural hazards. So we're thinking tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, wildfires, droughts, snowstorms, etc., etc. So why is Charlton doing this plan? Charlton's doing this plan because in the Federal Act of, Federal Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 requires all towns and cities to develop and adopt a natural hazard mitigation plan that's approved by FEMA, adopted by the town, the selectmen. By adopting the plan, it enables the town to pursue grant fundings through FEMA, through either the HMGP grants, PDM grants, or disaster declaration grants. What is the hazard mitigation? The plan is trying to permanently reduce or prevent loss of life. So we're thinking of things, what does the town do now that prevents loss of life, loss of monies? What can the town do better to improve upon those things or reduce reduce those losses? We've looked at places like buildings, the people and services in towns, regulations like zoning and planning rules, stormwater management, things of that nature. Another area that we can look about or think about is educating the public. We'll get more into that a little later. So basically at its core is we're trying to break the cycle of disaster rebuild. So we have a structure, like for example one of those water pumps, where it floods out, it needs to be repaired or replaced, or something needs to be done. We fix what's broke, then it rains again, and now we're back to the same situation, a month later, a year later, 5 years later, whatever the case may be. So we're really trying to break that cycle. Like I was kind of saying earlier, we were looking at all areas of all kind of weather situation we can think of. Flooding, whether it's localized flooding or a complete river flood or a dam failure flood, things of that nature. High winds, hurricanes, tornadoes, winter storms, snow and ice, earthquakes, landslides, so on and so on. But I really want to point out that, as you can see, nothing up here is a terrorism hazard. It's not a plan for how we're going to respond when these events happen. We're thinking about trying to prepare prior to when these storms do occur. So the planning process to date, CMRPC provided technical assistance to the town. With that was, we provided a lot of help, assistance with mappings, creating 3 maps, all different levels. Sorry about that, thank you. We also assisted the local committee that consisted of Carl Ekman, Todd Gerard. We met with them many times. After we created the maps and did a lot of the background research, looking at state plans and things of that nature, we conducted 3 meetings. First one was to identify the critical infrastructure in the town. The second, actually kind of second and third meeting was going over strategies and revisiting the old 2012 plan. Today we're here at the first public meeting. I kind of already said some of these things, but in the meetings, we've identified and mapped critical facilities, the local hazard areas. We reviewed the existing mitigation measures that the town is already doing. Also thought about ways of how we can improve some of those things, those mitigation measures. We came up with a completely new list of priorities and strategies to mitigate some of these storm-related hazards. And we also put out a public survey last summer of 2018. And just to give you some numbers on that, there were 62 responses. 60% of the town was somewhat concerned about natural hazards in town. 20% were not, and another 20% were extremely concerned about natural hazards in town. The top three were kind of standard for southern Worcester County. It was snowstorms, severe thunder and rain events, and localized flooding and drought. So I guess it's more like extreme hot and cold. And also, I'm gonna when we post this for the 2-week public comment period, I'm gonna repost the link to the survey. So anyone who maybe didn't notice or didn't take it, we'll have another chance to do that for the next couple of weeks. The 4 tools, kind of areas, these are basically the 4 places that we look. These are really broad categories, very much different than Fuss and O'Neill's study of water infrastructure. This is trying to look at structural infrastructures where water is, even thinking of infrastructures like snow fencing. So it's very, very broad. The preparedness coordinations, we're thinking about what do we have in place that prepares us now? What can we do better? Education awareness is sometimes just as simple as posting a hurricane website on the town's website now that we are in hurricane season. And we also looked at local plans and regulations, how can we adopt different bylaws for stormwaters? Do we stay in line with all the wetland bylaws? Has the town adopted their own bylaws? Things of that nature. Just trying to think outside the box for some things, where it's low cost, high impact. It's kind of like I said with structure and infrastructure projects, thinking about how do we keep the water away from a building? How do we keep the water off the road and going into the correct places where it should be going? So roadside drainage. We were also looking at all the culverts, which Fuss and O'Neill pretty much touched on every single one tonight. Even when we think about the pumping station where it's on a hill, everything's coming down towards it, could we build a berm to deflect that water away? Could it be something as simple as that? Also, some other things we were thinking about were much more complex. Another area was identifying the critical facilities. So this is kind of where a lot of mapping took place. We mapped out the critical facilities. We made sure that everything was where it is on the map, where it is in town. Is this shelter still a shelter? Has anything changed with that? With the maps, there's 3 steps. It's kind of the critical infrastructure. The next layer kind of adds the 100-year floodplains, 500-year floodplains, wildfire areas. We got a lot of that data from the state and fed data sets. So preparedness and response. This is where we're thinking about national flood insurance, community rating systems, evacuation planning, which was done a few years ago. We're thinking about facilitate and coordinate administration, enforcement, and collaboration. So a fancy way of saying, how well does the town talk to each other? How well does the town talk to its utility companies? Is there space in the town for the utility companies to come and run during a snow event, we'll say, when all the power is out? Is there a place for National Grid to come and operate out of? Like I touched on earlier, education awareness. You know, now that it's hurricane season, it's simple as putting up the link on the website, maybe throwing it out on social media, getting people to just be aware. Oh yeah, we're in hurricane season. Maybe I should think about some action steps that I can take personally as a resident of Charlton to better prepare myself for the up and coming potential storms. if we were in the winter months, I would probably say maybe we might want to put out generator safety things, something along those lines. I'm sure if the chief was here, he could probably vouch for it. He probably gets at least one call a year for a generator running in a garage or a living room or something unexpected. When we're looking at local plans and regulations, thinking about planning and zoning, what are we doing when the subdivision comes in? When a new subdivision comes in, are we trying to force them to put utilities or recommending or making it a town requirement to put those utilities underground? Is there a stormwater management plan that the developer has developed for that specific location? Where's that stormwater runoff going? Are we allowing people to build new structures in a 100-year floodplain or a 500-year floodplain? Are we disallowing that? Things of that nature. So like I kind of touched on a few other times, a lot of the data that we collected came from state and federal data sets, floodplains, snowfalls, wind speeds, hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires, tornadoes, et cetera, I also reviewed the Mass State Hazard Mitigation Plan to keep both plans in line. Not saying that Charlton is exactly as a state, but we're very similar, so I don't think Charlton has a higher rating of earthquakes than, say, somewhere in northern Massachusetts. So we're trying to stay in line with all those things. We also coordinated with the local team. Once again, they were instrumental in a lot of the information that we did collect, figuring out where local floodplains were, identifying all the culverts in town, where snow fences could be utilized or are being utilized, things like that. This slide's here, I always thought it's interesting when I look at it. I know I just said we probably don't have a higher chance of earthquakes, but this is all the earthquakes that have been measured since 1990. And below that is the recent declared hurricane and snow disasters. And the bottom part of the slide is kind of important because when the hazard mitigation plan, if the board chooses to adopt in the future, it's kind of the key to those FEMA funds that get released when those disasters are declared. Some of the existing mitigation measures, we've talked about a few of these already. Thinking about this comprehensive emergency management plan, following Mass State building codes. Some flood-related things would be something as simple and routine as street sweeping. We want to keep that up, do it more often as possible. Clean catch basins, drainage. So DPW goes out and cleans unclogs drains as need be. Zoning regulations, thinking of dam safety, keeping with state permits, keeping up with our safety regulations and inspections. Wind-related hazards we don't really think about too often, but if we all can recall, in January we had that high wind event where a few towns were impacted pretty highly, but we want to think of just a tree trimming program. How are we trimming our trees? How are we pushing these bushes back off the road? How are we clearing the power lines? Who's going to help us out with that? And brush fire-related hazards doesn't happen too often, but we want to think about giving out those permits, or excuse me, the town is already giving out permits to burn. So these are just a few highlights of what we came up with. This process started over a year ago, a little bit prior to when Fuss and O'Neill started their plan, but one of the first things was to pursue funding for a comprehensive study to identify and prioritize, replace the culverts town-wide, which, as I think we all heard tonight, that box can almost be checked off. I don't want to say that it can be, but we're well on our way. Another one was to inventory the shelter and emergency resources. So where are our shelters? Are they all up to code? Can we use, how many people can we get in there? Heating, cooling stations, what services available at each one, and also if this then that kind of thinking. So if a tornado comes through and it wipes out this shelter, now what? What's plan B? Or vice versa. Improve and maintain the various hazard warning systems, so meshes, boards, that's another part of that educational thing. Storms coming, winter storms, tropical storms, hurricanes, things like that. Code Red, keeping on gaining membership on Code Red, pushing things out through social media, and welfare checks was another thing that was brought up. Making sure we're checking on our neighbors, so it's not necessarily just that someone needs to call in to go do a welfare check. It's more like go knock on your neighbor's door. something that's basically a zero cost with a high impact, potentially a very high impact on the personal level. We also want to think moving forward that we want to incorporate each and every plan that we're using. So a lot of the things that came out of MVP did come into play into this hazard mitigation plan. So we want to keep thinking, like, instead of writing a plan, sticking it on a shelf, never look at it again, every time we're going to do something, we're going to try to incorporate those things. Just like the elementary schools getting the driveway ripped up to get a new water system put in, let's elevate that road. Let's put a roadside drainage in. Let's pitch it a little bit to one side. Something along those lines where we're doing things in conjunction with the next. So the next steps, we're going to put I won't be able to put this out till Thursday afternoon, but it'll be out to a 14-day public comment period roughly on Thursday, possibly Friday. So with the plan, I'll send the link to the town. Town can post that link, and with that link, I'll also include the survey like I mentioned earlier. So if you didn't have a chance, I highly recommend you take that survey. Once the plan comes back after the 2-week period, we'll incorporate any comments that do come back, make any last-minute changes that need to be made, and then we'll send the plan into MEMA. MEMA will review it. MEMA sends it to FEMA. FEMA reviews it. FEMA then sends it back to us with approval pending adoption. So once we get that back, I'll come back to the board. I'll request a formal adoption of the plan. If the board chooses to do so, then it'll become a live working document. We'll send it off to FEMA for final approval, and FEMA will issue its final plan approval. So once the plan does come back, then we want to think about implementing it. Kind of like I said before, we're going to try to implement this into everything that the town's doing, because we've looked at almost every vulnerability that has to do with a natural hazard in the town. So that kind of goes with transportation plans, housing plans, the MVP action grants moving forward, all those things. Who's gonna implement that? Who's gonna be the working group? Who's gonna be the group that continues to keep this work up to date and present in the forefront? How are we gonna go after those grants? Where are we gonna find those grants? Through Fuss and O'Neill, through CMRPC, on your own accords, things like that. So with that being said, as soon as I can, I'm going to be out of the office tomorrow, so I'm going to try to do my best to get this out on Thursday. The draft plan will be available here on CMRPC's website. I'll send that link to the town, and hopefully the town can get that on their website too. I know I moved through that kind of quickly. I apologize for that, but I guess I'll open it up to questions, comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any-
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
No, it's very straightforward, it's good, excellent, well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chief has something
Chief has a
to say.
question.
Just, I saw you brought up critical infrastructure and stuff. My concern is, has the site for the new building been looked at in regards to,
Glad you brought that up, Chief.
in regards to the floodplains and stuff like that? That's my only question.
It was not on our radar in our first meeting that we were looking at, but we certainly could include it.
That would make sense, I think.
We'll let you know where.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Speaking of, the next item
Thanks, Jeff.
would be the Public Safety Building Committee. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. You have a new flyer, new handout memo.
Yes.
Revised, I was able to talk with people. So, through the chair, under Article 16 of the annual town meeting held May 20th, 2019, town meeting voters approved construction for a new public safety complex. As you know, the original committee started out as the Fire Station Building Committee, which was formed at the Board of Selectmen's meeting on July 12, 2016, and expanded to become a Public Safety Building Committee at the board's meeting on March 28, 2017, to include the police department. With the approval of town meeting to move forward, the committee is asking who will oversee the design and construction. I would recommend the board form a committee for this purpose as a public safety construction building committee consisting of 2 members of the public, 2 members of the fire department, 2 members of the police department, 1 board of selectmen member, and also I would suggest 1 alternate member of the fire department and 1 alternate member of the police department. I would also recommend that current members be considered first if they wish to remain on the committee, which all did. I'm happy to report. I also want to say, if you're wondering why I've got the 2 alternate members, pretty much all of these people have been coming to every meeting, but it just helps us so that we don't increase the quorum. So everyone, our meetings do not look at members versus alternates, because pretty much somebody's always missing, so you're always, acting in the capacity to vote. So I would recommend that you appoint Ralph Fisk and Joe Habler as the 2 members of the public, Rob Barton and Brian Olet as the 2 members of the fire department, David Ryan as the alternate member of the fire department. He previously was a member of a different department, but now that we've got the design and found the place, we just definitely want to keep him on the committee. Dan Dowd and Keith Cloutier as the 2 members of the police department, Graham Maxfield as the alternate member of the police department, and I'm hoping, I wasn't able to get in touch with you today, but I'm hoping John McGrath, who has been the Board of Selectmen member, would like to continue. The committee would also like to discuss with you tonight next steps, namely whether to seek a ballot question, and if so, when. I did talk to the town clerk, and she reminded us that the election must be at least 35 days after she receives the final warrant. We talked about it possibly being held on August 13th or the 20th, and our staff is checking for school availability. You could authorize me to post an election on either of those days.
Thank you, Ms. Craver.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if you want, we can take these one at a time, but.
Well, if I may,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. If I may, I would like to, again, I won't make a motion, but I would like to make a request. I greatly appreciate all the work that the Safety Building Committee has done. I know, as does Ms. Spiewak, Ms. Noble, Mr. McGrath, Bill, the work that goes into being on a committee is extensive, a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of dedication. That being said, town meeting did approve the monies, but we're not locked into the plan or technologies. We have room to flex with that as long as they stay within the budget town meeting voted. That being said, and I do appreciate all the work that was done, I would personally like to see the makeup change for the next phase. I would like to see a 5 or 6 member committee. I think that, to me, it's critical that both chiefs are key members of this committee. The police chief, what I would ask for, the consideration of the board, to have the police chief and the fire chief on the committee, 1 member of each of their command staffs on the committee. Then add to that a citizen at large. Personally, I think I would recommend Mr. Fisk because of his background. And then either leave it at that or add a 6th member from the Board of Selectmen, Mr. McGrath. But I think it's critical that both chiefs are key members of this committee and not alternates are excluded going forward.
Through the chair. I think that the chiefs have basically picked the people that they feel represent them on the committee very well. And I know that the chiefs have not been shy in showing up at the meeting and expressing anything that they, although that has been very rare, they have expressed any specific instances that they had. So, and I know they're both in the room. I would probably ask them if they are comfortable with the way the committee is made up now, or if they would, accede to your recommendation.
So to the 2 chiefs, I guess the blunt way to put it, to Mr. McGrath's comments, do you have an issue with what I'm asking for, or are you fine with the other committee, or do you feel that the 2 chiefs should be not alternates, but voting members of what happens?
I work for you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have an issue. No, we've had several discussions. I guess my question would be, what are we looking to do going forward from this point to the town, when we get to the date for the ballot question? I mean, what are we trying to accomplish, I guess?
For me, I would think that we would want and again, this is just me, not the rest of the board, going forward, we would be looking at the recommended design, and I will put this out there. I've been made aware that there are 2 gyms in the building. which I think is a waste of space and taxpayer money. To me, it's a big issue that firefighters and police personnel can't work out in the same gym, so we're allocating 2 gyms, 2 sets of equipment. I think that what we should be looking at within that budget is the final layout and any adjustments that might be made. Could we take 2 gyms and actually make it 1 gym and then reallocate any monies freed up to other areas, as well as technologies that will be used in this building? And I think that, again, for just me, you too, I just think are critical components. That's just my feeling.
Well, you know, and I've voiced some of my concerns to the town administrator and both John regarding what's the next step of this, because, and I have no problem with the committee that's there, but I wanted to know what their charge was moving forward, because I think we're at a stage now where making decisions on how the building is gonna look and how it's gonna operate, communications, IT, and all that stuff, there needs to be subject matter experts involved that we need to be taking their recommendations from. And I don't know if this committee has any of that as far as subject matter experts. I don't believe there are.
I think it's one of the reasons I had asked for the 2 chiefs and members of the command staff, because I think they would bring that expertise to this phase.
May I add, just especially for the people at home that are watching, the committee that's been acting now, which I have to say that they've been very hardworking, dedicated.
Absolutely.
And also very much, I think, looking forward to continuing on this process. We have an OPM, so we have an owner's project manager that oversees the whole thing. And then we also have an architect who will be designing the building. This committee has done hours on its own of going out to other buildings and taking a look at them. Some of the things that the Chief Knopf is talking about is about expertise. We wouldn't expect, we've never expected to find that kind of technical expertise on a building committee. That's more the guiding body. But we would get experts in the areas that we need to. And, you know, that's factored into the RFP that we have and the contract that we'll have with the architect when we get to that stage. So I really don't want anybody at home thinking that this committee would be doing any design on technology or any of those components, because that would be done by professionals who do these buildings all the time.
So, and I do appreciate that. I will go back to one of the chief's points, though. And for the people at home, I did not imply or suggest that the committee members weren't qualified or didn't work hard. In fact, I was very clear that they did, and I know there's a lot that goes into it.
No, absolutely.
Yes, but beyond that, at this point, that work is done, and they should be thanked profusely for that. This is now the next phase. And to the fire chief's point, these are the people who are going to be working with that architect. And I would go back to, again, their knowledge, the command staff, their working knowledge of what's going to be needed, technology-wise, communications-wise, everything else in this building, that I just feel they're better suited at this next phase with members of their command staff and Mr. Fisk's experience to work with those architects. Again, this is just my feelings, to take this to the next phase and to fruition.
So my question goes back, through the chair, my question goes back to the chiefs, okay? You have shown up at the meetings and put your 2 cents in where you felt that it needed to be. But you've had your designees here, and I believe that they've done a fabulous job on making sure that we know everything that goes on. Do you believe that that needs to change? Do you believe that you need to be in the room at the Public Safety Building Committee meetings, or are your designees that you have appointed to the original committee, are they capable of handling the tasks that the chairman is bringing up?
I have full confidence in the 2 individuals, Lieutenant Dowd and Sergeant Cloutier. I have full confidence in their commitment and ability for the task at hand, as I do with Chief Knopf's fire representative, Firefighter Barton, and Firefighter Willett, captains, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah. They've done an outstanding job, and I think going forward, those 4 individuals will be key because of their knowledge and the fact that, you know, they've been with the project the whole time. That being said, we haven't had a lot of input other than, you know, we show up but we weren't voting members kind of thing. So we do want to be able to, I don't know, I guess, exercise our power of veto as chiefs. You know, should there be, should we go awry of what we think is the mission?
So, through the chair, maybe a suggestion is that we add the two chiefs to the committee, to the existing committee that the town administrator has already put forward. And the reason I say that is, pretty much everybody on that committee that's there has had at least an area where they have a lot of expertise. And I think that if we limit the size of the committee, you know, if we make it smaller and have a limited size committee, I think we miss out on some of that expertise. So my suggestion is, you know, if the chiefs want to be on the committee, we add them to the existing committee, and I think that that's probably, you know, would be a very workable subject. The more eyes and ears work and people working together on it, I think that we would be better off.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah. No, I think it's a good idea. My only concern, and I don't think this would ever cause an issue, but I know Chief Maxfield is already an alternate member. We could just make him a full voting member. And I know David Ryan is the current alternate member.
Yeah, his.
I mean, we could swap you out.
Well, and that's the
make
thing
you a
is,
voting member.
I'm unclear as to what he was assigned to. I believe he was a citizen who just happens to be a firefighter when the committee was formed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The requirement, I believe, was the same that you had done.
So that would have to be looked into.
It says he's an alternate for the fire department.
Yeah. So if we swapped out Mr. Ryan for Chief Knopf and made him a full voting member, I think through the chair, that may be a compromise.
Well, so he's listed here as an alternate, not a full voting member.
I'm sorry?
Here, he's listed as an alternate, not a full voting member. So
Oh.
if we replace him, we're just replacing him as an alternate, and he's not a full.
Oh, no,
voting
no, I'm
member.
sorry. Rather, I'd say both Chief Maxfield and Chief Knopf would then both become full voting members. Now, the question is, would we then want alternates as well? But,
I recommend that you keep it balanced between police and fire,
correct, yeah,
however
that's,
you do.
yeah,
It's
that's
the
what I'm
same
getting
number.
at on this.
The other thing is, if I can ask, chiefs, do you think that you'd be able to make every meeting? Because one of the ways we were looking at structuring it was if you wanted to be here, you certainly have a voice and you certainly carry a lot of information. But if your schedules wouldn't allow you to be here, that could put us at a disadvantage as far as quorum. So that's my only concern. And it doesn't, you know, doesn't have to, but I'm just saying, the more people you add, the larger quorum we have to get to actually have a meeting.
The problem is, the more people you add, the longer the meetings get, the more, you know, some of them are just, you know, you start here, and by the time everybody speaks, you're, you know, way over here, so.
I'm trying to go back to 2 or 3 member boards of selectmen, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Thank you.
Sit down.
So, Chief, to that point, though, if you couldn't make it, or if Chief Knopf couldn't make it, you'd still would have a quorum. You don't have to have 100% participation at a meeting to have a quorum. I just think, again, in conversations I've had, I think the knowledge the two of you bring, and again, it's just not to downplay the knowledge that's already there, but at this next phase, the knowledge and experience they bring as chiefs, I think, has to be
Well, if we had three.
To me, I'm sorry, Chuck. go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, it's all right, go ahead.
No,
All right, so, I think the only question for me at this point is basically, do we need alternate members? Because if not, again, we could make Chief Maxfield a full voting member for the police department, and then, as long as Mr. Ryan didn't have opposition, we could swap out Chief Knopf for David, make him a full voting member, and if we, as long as we don't have a need for alternates, then we're good to go.
Through the chair.
Ms. Noble?
Mr. Ryan
Thank
has
you.
expressed.
We want to do it.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. So, if we add 2 more members, it would bring the full complement up to 9 permanent members. And I think that's pretty close to what we have on the Marijuana Advisory Committee, because we did increase the membership there not too long ago.
Okay.
And,
It's still an odd number.
And it's still an odd number, and there was an issue a couple weeks ago where the MAC couldn't meet because we didn't have a quorum, because we now have 9 members. I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one of the things that Mr. Ryan brings is that he works for a large department, and he knows some of the issues that are going on, and I think, that, you know, he has seen a couple of stations that they have built in probably the last 15 years that have had some issues, and what has worked and what hasn't worked, and he's been very vocal on, you know, at the meetings about what, you know, so I think that we would definitely want him on the committee.
I don't wanna make it too big then.
No.
Then, why don't we just add both chiefs and then add an alternate police member, and then everything's back to the way it was? I know it's a little bit bigger than you guys want, but I mean.
I'm a libertarian, I like the limited scope of things, you know, I would just, you know.
Well, and my initial concerns were that as this thing progresses, somebody higher up is gonna have to make decisions about funding this, making sure that we're doing it the right way, the most efficient way, and I'm not so sure the committee is that answer.
So, through the chair. Chief, to that point, I think we've done enough buildings here, not on as large a scope as this with this larger budget, but I think that the board has been able to assist the committees in making financial. And all the committees have been very good, including this one, and very honest on what, where we are, what we're doing, and how much money. And I think that through when the committee meets, the town administrator brought that data back to the board, and I think that we've been able to make some good decisions on that. So I don't view that as a problem myself. Okay.
Here's the thing, we're at 9 now, through the chair, I think you recommended 5. The alternative is going to 11, or some other weird number.
My opinion is keep it at 9.
Yeah, I think 9, for me, I think, and to Ms. Knoll's point, would be a limit. I just think that, again, I mean, the board will do what it wishes. I think the chiefs have also stated themselves clearly here that they also feel that level of knowledge of the chief experience should be full voting members.
Sure. Yeah, I'd rather have no problem, to be honest. But then, how do we swap? Because if Mr. Ryan wants to stay on it, that messes up the numbers.
But if you
stays on
keep
as
it,
an
if you
alternate,
add
as an
2,
alternate.
then he stays on as alternate. The chief takes a full-time position, and then Chief Maxfield becomes a permanent member, and all we're missing is 1 police alternate.
Right.
Right.
And are we okay with that? I suppose that's all I'm getting at.
Because a lot of times people
Yeah.
can't come to every meeting. So-
And I've had that problem, just for timing of the meetings.
Yep.
So
So
leaving the 2 alternates, they're not members, but they will help you make your quorum.
Well, you say the 2 alternates though, but we would be but the chief would no longer be an alternate.
Right,
No,
he would
he'd be a
become.
full-time-
he'd be a
So
full-time
voting
it would
member.
become 3 police officers,
Mhm.
3
Firefighter.
firefighters, and 1 selectman
Yep.
and 2 citizens, and then you would have 2 alternates, police and fire. So I think that is a
Well, that would
good
be-
working building number. I think that would work.
The alternates don't count in that
Right.
quorum.
You know what, my math is off, because I was thinking 10. Never mind. I
So
think we're
we
good.
do that, and then
Your
both
math
chiefs
is
are
off?
full voting
I'm just a
members.
baker.
So that way we'd have to have 5 to have the meeting.
So I would,
Yeah, so Rob, I'm not crazy, right? Hold on.
It's still 11 members, and, if you include the 2 alternates, it's 9 full members
Right.
and 2
That's
alternate
fine.
members.
Yeah.
Thank you, so I was right, all right, I feel
You're
better
right.
now.
You didn't pull that.
so we can continue the discussion, or someone can make a motion in a second, that's up to you guys.
So I will, through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I will make a motion that they make up with the names inserted as 9 voting members and 2 alternate members.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion?
Do-
Mr.
Sorry,
Borowski.
last question, do we have to appoint an alternate member of the police department now?
Through the chair, I believe that recommendation would come from the chief.
Right, chief, I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be
can
Officer
come back.
Derek Gaylord.
Oh, if you wanna do that now, I'm good.
Yeah,
We're doing that now,
Okay.
too.
Please.
Yeah.
Do you want to amend your motion?
Yes, so, through the chair?
Yep.
I will amend my motion that Derek Gaylord be appointed as the alternate member.
Oh, one of us? 3. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we
No,
had
it's 3 members from each.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, the Dave is the.
Okay, so, yeah.
Okay.
So Derek Gaylord.
Who's
be
on
appointed
first?
as the alternate. So I amended my motion.
I play left field.
I'll amend my second.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I feel better that my math was right,
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thanks, Chief.
So, yes, thank you to the committee, thank you to the chiefs, and I would ask one parting gift. Please come back when you guys are done with the solution to the two gyms.
We can have that discussion as to why.
Thank you.
It's been beaten, seriously beaten.
And I
But
will
as much as we
convince
can
you that
beat it-
two are needed.
But as much as we can beat that to death, and people in departments may say it's needed, I think the taxpayers and their dollars may argue differently.
Jim, I think we had a question.
We still gotta talk about the,
Yeah.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, to your point, there's no cost associated with equipping the gyms. There's, in the $28.5 million that was appropriated, there's $0 associated with equipping either one of the fitness centers. It would be, each department, their unions would be the ones that would be outfitting the gyms.
So what about utilization of space, though? You could probably have all of the personnel utilize one space, effectively freeing up. Even if you had to expand one space to a certain degree, you still wouldn't necessarily have to expand that space to the size of an entire second gym, which should then free up space in the building.
So, through the chair, and maybe because this wasn't on the agenda, if we could maybe postpone this discussion, get the background information for the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
Just on this information,
Yes, which is why
and
I
then,
asked to
yeah,
come
no,
back with an answer,
perfect,
because I think
exactly.
if we are gonna go to
Yeah.
polls with this, which we have to do,
Mhm.
personally, as much as I'm behind it,
Yep.
I'm gonna have a hard time selling it with two gyms paid for. You know, with two gyms explaining that our first responders can't lift together, basically.
So,
Which now,
We'll come back to it.
And through the chair, now we have to discuss the date for the vote.
right,
Correct.
Okay.
which through the chair, I know the two dates we talked about was August 13th and 20th. Rob, you got a preference? Through the chair. Yeah, As I was guessing, I suppose.
would
I'm
suggest the
sorry.
13th and the
That's what I was
20th
thinking
as
too.
the alternate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
you know, we gotta do, well, we have a meeting scheduled for Thursday, a committee meeting, so, we were just hoping to have it sort of sooner than later, to have this committee, so, the ballot vote, so if the 13th is.
It's fine. We also want to do a little public information prior to that, just to keep the ball rolling and make sure everybody's up to date with everything.
So through the chair, I'd like to make a motion that we hold a referendum on August 13th with an alternate date of the 20th if the school is not available.
Second?
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. The next item on the agenda, we move to new business. That will be a request for common vic, Putter's Miniature Golf. Ms. Craver?
Through the chair, I'm going to recuse myself on this.
Are you a putter?
Are you still playing in the tournaments? Is that what they're-
I won the championship.
Of course you know.
Thank you.
I'll come get you. Don't go forward.
Okay. Mr. Chair, attached is a request for a common viculars coffee food license for Brian Reminick, Putter's Miniature Golf LLC at 360 Worcester Road. The hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, noon to 8 p.m. He has completed the paperwork needed for this request. It is recommended the board approve the request.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you. Get it back?
Well, not really.
It was very quick, so, yeah.
John, we're good.
The next item on the agenda would be town property naming policy and Potter Village Bridge. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. I was asked to look at what process the town would be, if the town would use if the Board of Selectmen wished to act on a request to name a bridge. Town council stated that absent a town or bylaw, or town meeting vote to the contrary, the authority with respect to naming town-owned property, which is under its care, custody, management, and control of the Board of Selectmen, which is to say that all property of the town not deeded to, or as to which the board has transferred such to, another board, committee, or commission, lies with the board. You could choose to adopt a policy setting forth general criteria, procedures, and considerations to be taken into account in deciding whether or not to name a particular piece of property, be it a building, portion thereof, or another structure, for an individual, an individual's memory, or for a donation. A policy would assure a more consistent approach and address some of the any concerns about precedent. With that, I have put together a draft policy for you to review. If you find this policy acceptable and approve it, we would follow the procedure outlined for Mr. Hilka's request to name the Potter's Village Bridge. I believe it would fall within the criteria, as both families are named, provided easements to the town during the reconstruction. You would also seek comments from the Highway Department, as that would be the only department affected, and we can set the meeting up for July in order to give the residents notice. This policy would also provide a process in case there were donors interested in naming a room or a wing in the new public safety building by making a donation. Other towns have been very successful in fundraising for purchases during construction, as appropriation constructions generally did not cover everything they needed. So the policy, and I think you've...
Yeah, you did a nice job with this, by the way.
Yep. Thank you. I can't take credit. Most of it was stolen from the town of Easton.
Well, you can have
Very
it in
good.
corporate America. We
Why,
steal stuff all
why
the time.
reinvent the wheel?
Exactly.
Good
You
job.
did a good job. Thank you.
So through the chair, the first thing I'd probably like to say is I'd like to make a motion that we approve this, the policy,
Second.
as written, by the way.
We have a motion and a second on approving the policy as written. Is there any discussion?
Through the chair,
Ms. Spivak?
I would recommend that we approve the policy, but take the procedure out of the policy, because procedures,
First.
But-
No, policy first, procedure second.
right, but to have the procedure as actually part of the policy, I'm not sure that,
It would make sense, as we give the policy, the procedure would be there, so it would all be on one sheet and all together.
usually though, the procedures can change quite frequently. You realize you need to dot more i's, across more t's. A policy is a little bit more difficult to change. It's more vague, it's vague
Not
and.
for the Board of Selectmen.
So I think, and through the chair, I believe what Karen is saying, Robin, is she's doing it more on an ISO approach, Karen, and that's what I'm used to. So I would say, it maybe moving on from here, if we separate them, because the policy would be the overall view of what we're doing, and then the procedure would basically be the instructions on how to do it. And they usually are two separate items, so maybe if the board, if the board wishes through the chair, that maybe that's the way we should start doing that.
Okay. So how we've put it here for the people at home is that it is, it's called the Charlton Board of Selectmen naming of town property, including buildings, roads, bridges, and rooms. And the purposes of this policy is to establish the criteria and procedures. So within this policy, we are creating the criteria and policies. So however you would like to do it, my only concern is having everything in one piece when it has to do succinctly. Having it all in one place has been very helpful.
Through the chair, how you organize it, I don't think is, you can have, in the same book, you can have the policy on one page and the procedure on the other, and just give them both sheets. That's, Karen, tell me if I'm
And
wrong.
you're correct, and the reason why I'm bringing this up regarding the procedure is the procedure, in my opinion, and I've been involved in philanthropy and naming opportunities for a number of years, the procedure needs to be far more detailed, quite honestly. When you get into any kind of naming opportunities, record-keeping, forms that need to be filled out.
Yeah, we didn't go that
Right,
deep.
so that's
We're
part of, in
using
my head,
general-
that's part of the procedure. And the policy simply is broad and more encompassing, and then refers to the procedure that you will follow.
So through the chair, just to Karen, I remember when we used to do things, procedure would have to be voted on by the board, or, approved by upper level management, as it
Policy.
used to be. And then the procedure, when you add things and line items on the instructions and stuff, that didn't
Right.
need to be brought back to the board to be approved. So as staff moves forward and says, hey, I'd like to change this procedure, you don't have to keep coming back here saying, do you guys agree with this?
Correct, that's exactly why. So, and you misspoke, you said procedure twice, but I know you meant policy
Yeah.
on, I gotcha.
So through the chair, I'd like to amend my motion to adopt the policy section of this, with the procedure being kept separate and under the governance of the town administrator, obviously with our review if necessary, but so basically we're just adopting the policy part of the section.
So you have an amended motion, is the second amended also?
Yes, I'll amend my second.
So we have a motion, we have amended motion and amended second. Is there any further discussion on the motions as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
So next up, Mr. Selectman, I'd like to recommend, I don't know if we need a motion for it, but that we take this up, publicize, et cetera, for our meeting in July to vote, move forward, whatever term we want to use, on the request of Francis Hilka and Joseph Mazzoni to have the bridge named after them.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
We'll see you next month.
Thank you, everybody. The next
And through
item,
the chair,
yes, sir.
I'd just like to say thank you to both families for working with the town on that issue that we had down there. They were very, very kind and allowed us to do a lot of work around there using their property, so thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, under new business, number 3,
I don't care how we
Through
do
the
it.
chair,
Ms. Noble.
regarding item number 3,
Yes, Ms. Noble.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this item until either our July 30th or August 13th Board of Selectmen meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the tabling and postponement of this article?
Nope.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, can we just go back real quick, just around the town property naming procedures? Is that something that we're just gonna defer completely to the town administrator, or is that something that we wanna review, or? Because I know we just said that
So-
we're gonna take it out of it, so I just don't know what that means.
Again, and so that's entirely up to this board. I think that that's something we should probably discuss when they come back. But procedure, I would think the board would want to at least have it say in what your opinion is on what that should be. And once it's determined, changes going forward, to Mr. McGrath's comments, wouldn't have to keep coming back. They need to make a
Right.
tweak here or there.
Right.
They can do
Correct.
it.
No, I just wanna make sure that we're giving the proper direction to Robin. so
Right,
she knows what's going on.
and I was gonna clarify that. So the procedure, we would have to approve, and any changes to the procedure, we'd have to approve. Initially, on the policy, okay, we would approve that for a new policy. After that, as it's a working document, the town administrator and staff would be able to change that, at their discretion, add what they felt needed to be eaten, add or delete what needed to be
The
deleted.
policy or the procedure?
The
Procedure.
procedure.
You keep changing. So,
The proce-
It's not getting confusing.
The instructions.
You know what, can we just talk about it in July? Because, again, I just wanna make sure that we're giving Robin intelligent.
Well, at this
Yeah.
point, so to stay on the record, I'm gonna use the procedure that's in here.
I actually like the procedure that's in there, at least for now, but,
And we'll
Yeah.
probably have to flesh it
And you
out
can-
at some point.
yeah. No, Robin, I think that, at least for me,
Okay.
that works.
And speaking of that,
it's,
the next item on the agenda
it's,
is actually the not. I'm ahead of myself
I was
again.
gonna say, you were so close there for a second.
So close.
One more.
Two more items on the agenda before the second one will be that topic. Number 4, Tough Mudder request for special alcohol permit and traffic and crowd management permit. Ms. Craver?
not realize that
Page
was so
74.
large. Thank you. Attaches a request for a special alcoholic beverage license for wine and malt beverages and an application for traffic and crowd management from Tough Mudder Event Production to be used for an obstacle course, mud run featuring a 3-mile run and an 8 to 10-mile run. The courses are designed to test participants all around strength, stamina, and mental grit. Tough Mudder focuses on camaraderie and teamwork, encouraging everyone to help each other complete the course on June 29th and 30th of 2019, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the 508 International, 219 Brookfield Road. The number of persons expected to attend is Saturday, 6,230 at 250 to 1,000 hours, and Sunday, 1,300 at 15 to 300 hours.
I'm sorry, I think that means people per hour. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The police department, fire department, and building commissioner have all reviewed the requests. Special alcohol beverage license and crowd management permits. The stipulations, the chief had no stipulations. The building commissioner has requested temporary tent-like structures that have been issued a building permit. They, and the venue will require an inspection on June 27th in the afternoon, at which time the promoter has indicated they will be 80% complete with setup. Any of the temporary tent-like structures with a capacity of more than 50 persons will have a minimum of 2 exits, 60 inches or more in width, with defined aisles to the exits. The tent-like structures will be removed within 30 days of the event. Signage of at least 5 feet by 5 feet will be placed at the intersections of Brookfield Road with Route 49 and City Depot Road a week in advance, advising the motoring public of the upcoming event. Jennings Drive will not be used for access to the parking field on the unimproved portion of Jennings Drive. Bus querying and pickup locations will not be on any public way, and all events, including staff, bus, and support vehicles, are prohibited from using Ladd Road for ingress, egress, staging, and turning. The chief denied this at this time due to the failure to provide tip certification and failure to pay the police detail invoice of $9,307.50 prior to the event per agreement. Upon receipt of the requirements, he would require the following. On Saturday, June 29th, traffic and parking, 1 officer and cruiser at the entrance from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. 3 officers assigned to traffic, parking, pedestrian assist crossing from 7 to 5. During the event, 3 officers, 2 alcohol must be named during sales, and 1 roamer, a supervisor, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. On Sunday, June 30th, traffic and parking for 1 officer cruiser at the entrance at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. 3 officers assigned to traffic, parking, pedestrian crossing, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the event, 3 officers, 2 for alcohol, and 1 roamer. Per the board's policy, the license, if approved, should be issued for 2 days, which is also to allow delivery the day before of the event and for pickup after the event, where no sales would be allowed. The dates on the license should be June 28th through July 1st, 2019. It should be noted that this application was submitted by email to departments and no hard copy supplied. Departments have been working with this venue for months, and some are still waiting for appropriate items before giving their approval. If the board wishes, it could approve these permits pending all items received as required and any stipulations outlined in the approval. The event is scheduled for next weekend, and the board does not have a meeting prior to the event other than tonight. You do have a recommended motion if you so wish to consider.
I noticed there's one thing missing from the motion.
What would that be?
The motion includes I can talk. The motion appears to include the stipulations put out by, or forth by the fire chief, building commissioner, and the police chief. However, what's missing from the stipulations is the police chief's request for the tip certification to be provided and the payment of the detail fee prior to the event. That should also be a part of the motion, I would think.
Yeah, through the
It
chair.
says
Yeah.
with following stipulations provided, yes. And pending all requirements met by police, fire, and building departments.
Right, and then when you
So-
read the actual bulleted list of all the stipulations,
Yes,
that's
we,
not in
we
there.
would, we can add that, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure through the chair, I noticed the same thing, I wasn't sure if that fell under pending all requirements or not, but we can obviously call it out.
I would think that that would be a stipulation of the police chief, since he said denied.
Correct.
I would rather call it out than not, let's put it that way. But, so,
Through the chair.
through the chair?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Deb, go ahead.
So,
No, I had, through the chair, I had
Yes,
a couple of questions. May I ask
Mhm.
Amber? Hi, Amber.
Hi, I'm actually not at liberty to answer your questions, but I can get Tough Mudder on speakerphone for you.
Excuse me, through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
This is not, this permit is
So-
for Tough Mudder, it's not.
So,
Okay.
I
okay.
have some issues here, okay? And this is for Amber, okay? Here we are on, what, the 19th or 18th?
18th.
And you have an event on the 29th. We have people who have used your facility, not you, okay, but who have used your facility. They owe the town money, okay? We have, and this is the way I'm reading this, and, you know, we haven't obviously had any problems here because it doesn't appear to be any, that there's a large amount of people here. But I think that you need to really make sure that the people who are using your facility and are responsible to make sure that they have all their information into the town in a timely manner so that we can make a proper motion, rather than having all these stipulations that the staff, the town administrator, the fire chief, and the police chief have to follow up on, okay? And, you know, I know it's not you, it's somebody that is using your venue, or, you know, or 508 International venue, but, you know, please make sure that they understand that. I'm not happy that we have outstanding bills, especially after sitting in with the original discussion that we had with the police chief and the fire chief, what, not more than 2 months ago? And we're still going around this thing about they owe us $9 grand. That does not make me happy.
Well, just to clarify, I completely agree with you, and this has been an ongoing process. New things have come up on their end that they are kind of behind the ball on to pick up where other things were left off. So there's no argument there. The condition from the police chief is for a prepayment for the details of the event, not a missed payment
Oh,
from.
no, I know what it is, I
So,
know, but I
just
know,
to clarify.
but through the chair, I know why it's a prepayment now, because they didn't pay last year. So that.
They did pay. It just
Yeah, they
was not
paid
within the
not in a
30
timely
days.
fashion, though.
Yeah.
They used our money to finance their thing, and I'm not happy with it.
This goes down the road of this town has a history with issues with detail accounts.
Exactly.
And we want to avoid
Exactly.
that. I think a nice way to put it, in agreement with Mr. McGrath, is not your fault, really, right? And it's unfortunate you have a client of your own, that they are putting you in an uncomfortable position that you shouldn't have to be in because of them.
Well, just in, if I may, through the chair, it's completely within your hands to decide how you want to move forward, so
So-
I'm not here to make any argument one way or another.
Is there any chance that, and again, it's your client, not ours, to get them to work with the chief to ensure that that check arrives before this event?
Yes, I'm told that they are cutting checks on Thursday. That is what I've heard.
So that check would have to be overnighted to get to the chief in time?
No, it's wired.
Chief? It's wired?
It's, I guess, through the chair, it has, and as I said before, it has nothing to do with 508 International. It's a client that they had, that came in and actually met with us because they had a previous event, and they were on a prepay basis because they did not pay last year in a timely fashion. And as you brought up, we had problems with the detail account. The chief and his staff have done a wonderful job in cleaning it up and making sure that everybody's in line. And this is, to one point, this is what he's doing right here now. No ticky, no washy. And that's.
Oh, John, I don't know.
Whatever,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
you have to
Procedure
take,
and policy.
you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But
I'm just gonna stay over here and just say, yeah, John, don't say that.
that's fine.
It's late.
But to the point, that's, you know, it is. That's, you know, no service, no money. And,
So it would be fair, though, to put into the motion, that stipulation, and they'll wire to the chief, and then everything's fine.
right.
Through the
Again,
chair.
I'm just
Through-
suggesting that get
through-
included.
through the chair.
Ms. Noble?
All things being equal, even if the money gets wired to the chief by Friday of this week.
Through the chair.
Hang on.
I'm sorry.
Even if it gets wired to you by Friday of this week, does that give you enough time to schedule officers for these details?
I received an email, through the chair. I
Wait,
received.
you can do that.
I received an email that they would be delivering the check on the 24th. I have that email, which would be Monday. Now, again, this is not 508. We have a great relationship with 508. But we met with these people from Tough Mudder months ago, and I don't mean 1 or 2, I mean 4 or 5. And they were told then that because we had to chase them last year, okay, you all, when you hired me, you gave me one job. Clean up the details and don't let it happen again.
You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, and we've met with them face to face on several occasions, including the last time on June 5th, where again, we handed them an invoice, and I made it crystal clear. This is paid up front, or there will be no event. Okay, so they're aware. But the problem is that, you know, like Selectman McGrath said, is that somehow now, poor planning on their part is somehow going to constitute an emergency on all of ours.
Yes.
And that's not gonna happen.
And
That's not gonna fly.
Right.
and
So,
through the chair, and that is why I am not happy, because I sat in this room 4 or 5 months ago when they said that they were gonna perform, and that all this other stuff was under the, you know, water under the bridge, and not a problem. And here we are, 7 days to an event, or 9 days to an event, and we're once again waiting on them. And that's all. I just want to publicly voice my displeasure with the way they're doing business.
If the stipulations aren't met, if the chief doesn't have his check on the 24th, and it clears,
bank check, yes.
bank check,
Cash.
or wire, to Amber's point, and they don't have the tip certification, the permit doesn't get issued, the event doesn't happen.
Through
No,
the
I
chair.
Have to read it.
And then my recommendation to 508 would be, you go after Tough Mudder for the money anyway, because they're under an agreement with you, they failed to deliver, they failed to live up to their contractual obligation with you, and the town, and the chief.
Well, Chair, I might recommend that as a further stipulation, that the money is in hand on 6/24.
That was my point.
Excuse me, to the chair. Even if the money is in hand by the 24th, which is just 4 to 5 days prior to the event occurring, does that allow for proper coordination of an event as large as this?
Only Amber and the chief can answer those questions.
I can get my people in place that quickly, yeah.
I won't do this again, I'll tell you right now.
I have to
If
ask,
the
I
board
am
considers
not-
this, I will not do it again.
I am not comfortable with this. My concern, besides having the police department get paid, is I'm also concerned about a local business being abused.
This is a reflection on Tough Mudder, not 508.
I understand that.
For sure.
But it does,
It puts
How about
your
this?
local
508,
business and
508,
residents
yes.
in an untenable situation.
It does, and 508 has worked extremely hard to cultivate a better relationship with the residents of the town, to their credit. They've done a tremendous job, and you've put on some wonderful events, and they've been well coordinated, and I don't want to see this particular other organization place you in a bad light, because that's not fair to you, not at all, and you shouldn't be put there.
Mr. Moran?
Through the chair, I didn't mean to open this up when I stood on my
Look what you
soapbox.
did.
But I did. And,
Look what you did.
and I have full faith in the chief collecting his money, otherwise they will not, there will be no event. So I have no problem with that, but I just wanted, my displeasure, as I've repeated, is
So,
with Tough Mudder.
are we adding that into the actual motion?
I
Yes,
would-
the money
Yes,
and-
I could make a motion if
Please.
you like.
Please.
And then we can second for discussion.
Knock
if
yourself
that's okay.
out.
So I'm going to move, and please, where I go straight. I move to approve the special alcoholic beverage license and the traffic and crowd management permit as requested by Tough Mudder to be used on June 29th and 30th at 508 International, 219 Brookfield Road, as outlined in the applications and pending all requirements, including, but not limited to, again, I'm gonna call this out now, the chief specific to provide tip certifications and the prepayment of the $9,307.50 by June 24th.
Thank you.
Close of business.
Yeah, close of business, thank you very much, 5 PM.
Bank check or wired,
Bank check amount, yeah, it has to be,
or wired.
or wired, exactly, ACH wire, that money has to be there.
Mhm.
All right, so where was I? All right, met by the fire, building, and police departments with the following additional stipulations provided by individual departments. Building commissioner, the temporary tent-like structures have been issued a building permit. They and the venue will require an inspection June 27, 2019 in the afternoon, at which time the promoter has indicated they will be 80% complete with setup. Yeah, do you want me to stop or just keep going? Yeah, actually, any of the temporary tent-like structures with a capacity of more than 50 persons, or a minimum of two exits 60 inches or more in width with defined aisles to the exits. The tent-like structures will be removed within 30 days of the event. Signage of at least 5 feet by 5 feet be placed at the intersection of Brookfield Road with Route 49 and City Depot Road. A week in advance, advising the motoring public of the upcoming event. Jennings Drive will not be used for access to the parking field on the unimproved portion of Jennings Drive. Bus queuing and pickup locations will not be on any public way, and all event traffic, including staff, bus, and support vehicles, are prohibited from using Ladd Road for ingress, egress, staging, and turning. And again, specifically, the additional piece from the police chief, Saturday, June 29th, traffic parking, 1 officer cruiser at entrance 7 AM to 5 PM. 3 officers assigned traffic parking, pedestrian assist crossing 7 AM to 5 PM. Event, 3 officers, 2 alcohol, must be manned during sales, 1 roamer, supervisor OIC, 7 AM to 3 PM. And Sunday, the 30th, traffic parking, 1 officer cruiser at entrance 8 AM to 4 PM. 3 officers assigned traffic parking, pedestrian assist crossing 8 AM to 4 PM. Event, 3 officers, 2 alcohol, must be manned during sales, 1 roamer, supervisor OIC, 8 AM to 4 PM.
Thank you, Mr. Borowski, graduate of the Evelyn Wood School of Speed Reading.
I will second that.
Step it up. And the only thing I'll say for discussion through the chair, that I will not vote for this again. I mean, meaning, I don't care if it's 30 days, I mean, chief, I promise you, you will never be put in this spot again. Or at least whoever's organizing this outside of 508, I don't care what happens in town, I will never vote for one of these again.
Thank you.
So let that message go out to everybody.
Okay, we have a motion.
Sorry, I'm on my soapbox.
And a second.
And a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion and the second? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Amber,
Thank
you
you,
good?
everybody, thank you, chief, thank you, Amber.
And Amber,
Thanks, chief.
if that money arrives at 5:01 on the 24th, they're done.
And now,
Good luck, Amber.
we go back to ours a step ahead.
I am not.
Summer
Yeah,
schedule.
summer schedule.
Usually, this board has reduced the number or frequency of its meetings over the summer due to the scarcity of its members and other personnel, due to summer vacations and time off, PTO. So that is on our agenda again. We do this time of year every year.
Through the chair,
Ms. Noel.
I'd like to apologize to every board member that I did not fill out this form. My schedule at work and with my family has been in a state of flux at the moment.
No worries.
But, I do know what dates I can be here and cannot at this point, but I do apologize for not filling it out ahead of time.
And again, there are 5 members of the board.
It's on
For
page 112.
For most business anyway, we need 3 for the quorum and to have our meetings. For certain items, obviously, we prefer to have the full board. I'm getting there.
Through the chair, any chance, Deb, that you're available July 16th?
No.
No,
And
that's cool.
and through the chair, I did submit a change in my schedule. I'm actually available on July 2nd.
I
I
did see
didn't
that.
have that, and not on the 16th,
Gotcha,
unfortunately.
okay. How about we just meet July 30th?
I'm good on July 30th.
Mhm.
July 30th, all of August,
I'm checking,
into September.
Yeah, you said yes on this.
You said yes, yeah.
I'm double checking. But
'Cause his-
schedule's changed.
His schedule changed.
You just want to paddle.
Oh, look, I have a selectmen's meeting that night, so I can do it.
Okay.
So the 30th does work for me.
Okay,
Rob, that work for you?
okay.
So you have July 30th, what about August, everybody?
Either August doesn't matter to me, either day.
Yeah.
I
fine.
am gonna be gone for 10 days in August. Thank you.
I think I'm fine either one, so 13th or 27th.
When do the kids go back to school?
I think the third week.
Bill?
The 13th
You
is
have kids in
just
school.
on the
Well,
election.
Millbury, but yeah, I think it's like the last week of August.
Okay.
You just
So we
set
do
the
the-
election for August 13th, right?
Or
Yeah.
20th.
Or
So
20th.
27th?
Yeah, the 27th.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rob.
27th.
So the 27th?
Yeah.
So July 30th and August 27th?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which works out well, because then we'll be back on schedule on September 10th.
Perfect.
okay.
That works all
So, so that'll be July 30th and August 27th.
Okay, just so you know, my birthday's the day before the 27th, so you can bring cake.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay, let me write that down.
Maybe bourbon,
Cake.
I don't know.
Look, I wrote it down. I know this little Italian bakery in town.
All right. Do we have a motion and a second on this? or-
I'll make a motion that our agenda, that our selectmen's meeting be July 30th, summer schedule, August 27th, and September 10th.
So moved.
Okay.
I'm sorry, second.
So
Sorry.
we have a motion and a
I'm
second.
speaking chair again. so-
It's getting late.
Is there any
folks.
discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously. We have no old business, no committee reports. We have a BOS policy review, and that is one item, policy and procedure for requests made to the selectman's office. This is, as I understand it, basically an opportunity for us to talk about when requests come in from the outside. How do we handle this? One of my big issues is to ensure that every member of this board is aware of everything that comes into our office. There should never be a case where I know something that you don't, or you do and you don't. So I want to have a conversation with you guys about, what should the town administrator, what should Mary, what should our office do upon the receipt of any inbound requests of our board.
Mr. Chair, can you define requests? We have a lot of
When someone,
administrative things coming in.
so if someone, to me, if someone wants to sue us, threaten us, come before the board, has a complaint, major items, it should be automatic that all 5 members of this board are made aware immediately, not 24 or 48 hours later, but immediately. Small little things like, hey, you owe $10 on the town's electric bill. I don't think you have to.
Or there's a pothole. Yeah, I don't need to know that.
Well, actually,
Really?
there's a complaint. I tell you something. You guys put me in the seat, and because of you, I've gotten a lot of phone calls about road issues.
With
So-
potholes, I would recommend that that's something that our departments will
Yeah.
handle, so if you can send that, let me know that you've gotten that complaint, then I don't know if you need to let everybody know, but if you let me know, we can try and move that forward.
And that may also simply be, she can send an email, hey, there was a complaint about this issue on road XYZ. You don't have to respond to it, but at least you're aware of the
Yeah, I'm
complaint.
fine with that.
And
Yeah.
and through the chair, I know we have a number of policies that have been drafted that are pending, and we haven't revisited them yet. I think a lot's been going on,
That was the
But
meeting
that- I
that
think
the
that was-
3 of us had.
and I think that's one of them, too.
Yeah.
So if maybe, I think it's on Mary's to-do list to go back and revisit and see what's pending, but I thought it was on there, like a communications policy. I'm not sure. I don't
So the-
remember, because it's been so
I know,
long.
but I do remember us having a discussion about the communications policy because some of the terminology in it
Mhm.
was outdated and old.
So would it,
But I don't know that we ever finalized it. I think it
No,
was one of the
we had
ones
to
that
have
we had to go
another
back and
meeting on
revisit.
it. It had to come up in another
Right.
meeting, so it's through the chair. I believe it's on Mary's to-do list.
is there a
She's been
to-do
going
by
through it,
when?
but let me make a suggestion also. You need to do your goals and objectives. So would you like to vote the following week after your September 10th meeting as a workshop to do your goals and objectives, and we'll bring all of that together.
That'd be the second.
That way, everybody's pretty
Yeah,
much
works-
through
works for me.
vacations.
Yeah.
We won't miss anybody.
So that would be the September 17th date?
17th and 24th, depending upon when we do it.
It'll be the in-between, so if you're gonna meet us.
Okay, if we meet on September
10th.
10th, then it would be September 17th when
The
we do
following
our
Yeah.
goals and objectives and,
Usually you end up doing it in September anyways.
okay. And we can bring all this back, the communication policy.
So with that in
I
mind,
think
if you can
that's-
start, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's just, I think that's important, and I also
Mhm.
think part of that, and then under communication, as well as in both internal and external communications,
Mhm.
timeliness, right? So as
Yeah.
Ms. Craver is aware, there've been some emails that I've received recently, unfortunately, where people have been ongoing, waiting for responses since April or May, and we're in June. So I think what we have to do is, and to Mary's to-do list, every time we have a to-do list or a request to our office, it should be our goal to respond to that within 24 to 48 hours. Even if the response is, we're working on this, but they should hear back from us ASAP.
You know, I think as part of goals and objectives, we develop a service level agreement.
Yeah,
I like that. That's good.
okay. Got that out. I talked a lot tonight, jeez.
I'm impressed with you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have that. Do we need a motion? Thank you. We need a motion and a second to schedule that, or are we just gonna ask to have that on the agenda?
Just put on the
Yes, put on
agenda.
So will you please put that on the agenda? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
The
And
next
that
item will be the
date,
town administrator's report.
You know what, as I'm looking at September too, do you want to schedule your all boards and committees meeting? Do you want that to go into September or October?
Either one. Well, we're already having two in September. You
It's
you want to do
on.
it?
I would say that's gonna be
Okay.
October.
Yeah. And my guess is we'll probably have some leftover stuff from the summer that we're gonna have to deal with in September regardless, so that's probably great for me.
That's gonna be packed.
Yeah.
So probably October.
Okay.
And then the next item will be the town administrator's report.
Yes, sir. Partridge Hill Road poll hearing update. At the board's May 21st meeting, you held a hearing for a request for a poll on Partridge Hill Road. Some abutters had questions and National Grid was asked to work with them. We have been notified by National Grid that they have withdrawn the request for Partridge Hill Road poll. Should they resolve the issues with the abutters, they will notify us, and if they wish to proceed. Alan Gordon versus the Town of Charlton. We have been notified by our counsel that Alan Gordon's attorney did not take an appeal to the court's summary judgment decision in the town's favor. The board can consider this matter over and resolved in the town's favor. DeJesus dog complaint update. Mr. DeJesus has appealed the decision of the board with the Dudley District Court regarding the dog named Cato. The hearing at the court is scheduled for Monday, June 24th at 2:15 p.m. Anyone wishing to be heard on that matter can attend the hearing. At this point, no action can be taken until a decision of the court has been made, and I will keep you updated. Community meeting, ExxonMobil Construction. Tuesday, June 11th, there was a well-attended community meeting where staff from DEP and ExxonMobil answered questions regarding the waterline construction. Residents rotated between stations after a brief presentation. Anyone who has additional questions should contact the Water Sewer Department. New England Water and Environmental Association. I gave a stormwater presentation at NUIA's annual conference in New Hampshire on the 4th on the Think Blue Stormwater Education Campaign. As you know, the town of Charlton is the lead on a $170,000 grant from DEP to the Mass Statewide Stormwater Coalition. I'm happy to also let you know that this project won an award from NUIA called the Stormy Award. Short-term investigation, letter to judge. The email search has been completed for the short-term investigation, and you've received information on how to view those emails. Regarding the long-term investigation, independent auditor at the board's June 4th meeting, I was asked to reach out to JAMS for an estimate and a writing sample. I'm waiting to hear back from them, and will provide that information when I receive it.
Through the chair?
Ms. Noble, sorry.
If I have time, I just put the hearing on the 24th on my calendar. If I can, I will try to attend just for informational purposes only. If it fits into my schedule, I can pop down there at lunchtime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was it for your report.
Yes, sir?
So, is there any other business unknown?
Yeah, just very, very briefly through the chair. Robin, I'm sorry to bring this up before, and I don't expect an answer now. Can you just confirm for me the next, whatever, like by the next meeting, what the redundancies are for IT support? I'm thinking more specifically between the relationship between Ken versus Jeff, et cetera, around admin access, et cetera. The real gist behind all this is, I just want to make sure that, like, God forbid something happened on the servers on the weekend, and, you know, Chief Maxfield or Chief Knopf needs something, that somebody's covering and that people have like access for it. Again, I don't need an answer
I
now.
can tell you it's limited because our contractor has a lot of that in his own silo.
Okay.
We're working to have our IT technician gain more access to that, and actually I had a conversation with him today
Oh,
about it.
seriously? Oh.
So, we are working on that.
Good, yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Anything that we do to expedite that, just, it happens to be, there's some strange things also happen in my work where people who have, let's just say, singular access have now caused issues because these people are no longer there. So it's like, oh, that's a problem, so.
Yeah, one of the things I had a conversation with him about today was if you could go and overlay the perfect system underneath whatever's going on, can you tell me what that would be? So how much money would we need to kind of revamp so that you can take it?
All right.
And just on that same note, website, we're in the process of changing it over.
Very cool. Yeah, like I said, anything we do to expedite, just again, to make sure that we have backup, redundancy, contingency, et cetera.
I know there was some
especially-
difficulties.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I'm good.
So our next meeting will be July 30th, here in the second meeting room, 6:30 PM. The next item would be to adjourn to executive session. Someone care to make the motion?
Is this the same motion that we're still using? Because I know that,
I think
I
it's
don't think
minus number one.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, Jim, help me out where goes during this. So I make a motion to enter an executive session under, actually, here's a question. Because it's posted, do we have to read it?
No, you can just say hold it.
You hold it, okay.
Just remove it.
So I make a motion to enter an executive session under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, to discuss number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, fire union, or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. So we're only going in for those 2 reasons.
And the chair does declare.
I'll second that.
Yes.
So, by roll call vote, Ms. Spiewak?
Yes.
Mr. Borowski? Ms. Noble?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Chair votes aye. It's okay, I thought you wanted to say. Yeah,
sorry.
so the board is now in executive session, and we will come out of
Correct. It's-
executive
yes,
session
yes.
solely
That's
for
what
the
I was
purpose of
asking to say.
adjournment.
Whether we could.
Notice I said yes and not what?
I didn't read the. Yeah.
All right, read it again.
So I make a motion to enter an executive session under MGL 30A, Section 21, Number 1, to discuss the discipline or dismissal or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. Number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Number 3, again, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, fire union, or litigation if an open meeting may have it may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
And the chair does declare.
And I'll second that.
So, the chair has declared with motion and a second, again by roll call vote.
Yes.
Ms. Spiewak is currently indisposed. Mr. Borowski?
Yes.
Ms. Noble?
Yes.
What? Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are now in executive session. We will come out of executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment.
Okay.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Patsy Jean.